Erica, take us back to you're moving to Los Angeles, and I believe you booked your first TV show just 2 weeks after moving to LA?
Mm-hmm. Yes. Um, so I get obsessive about my goals and my dreams. Obsessive, I think it's a good thing, although it can border on unhealthy. And I knew that I wanted to work in television. I wanted to work in Hollywood. And so before I moved to LA, about 6 months prior, I started researching people to connect with. And I really, I think I emailed about 150 people, cold email. I would watch the credits after a movie. I would look on IMDb, for TV shows that I enjoyed and look up people who were doing what I wanted to do, which at the time was graphic design. And I would cold email and message people. And so that is really what helped me book my first TV show so quickly, because one of the contacts, and now granted, out of 150, maybe 3 people, wrote me back or were helpful. So it wasn't a lot of people, but one of those contacts ended up being very helpful. Actually, maybe 2. But one person really connected with me, and it helped that he was a little younger. He was closer to my age. And so we sort of connected as friends, and that really helped. And I always tell people, when you're trying to make connections in this industry, work on making friends. Really try to think about it as you're connecting with people that you can genuinely connect with, because those are the people that are going to be so much more open to helping you. So that's what happened. So I connected with this one guy, and he was very nice. And I came out to LA 2 weeks, a month maybe, before I was going to move to look for apartments. And I ended up showing him my portfolio so that he could kind of, get an idea of my work. And then when I moved to LA, the very first week, he gave me a test, like a test project to see how I do under pressure and, if I can do this. Designing graphics for television, not that it really requires super different skills than designing graphics for anything else, but the pace is different, and, they're going to be looking for something specific. So, he gave me a test. He actually did pay me for it, which was really sweet. So it was on a show that he was working on, and he gave me one of the graphics and said, here, make this logo. And I guess I passed the test because the next show that he was offered, he couldn't take. And so he recommended me, and then I got to interview for that show, and then I booked it.
When you went back after looking for the apartment, and I'm assuming you flew back, was there any doubt that maybe you wouldn't come out, or you were ready to go?
No. It's so interesting to look back at that time, because I look back and I think, why weren't you more scared? Or why didn't you have more doubt? I was so obsessed. In high school, I had done a summer at UCLA. And I did their intensive theater program. And so I had already spent some time living in Los Angeles, and I was enamored with it. I just thought LA was glamorous and, everything that the movies make LA out to be. I joke about it because at UCLA, we weren't really allowed outside of the UCLA radius on our own. So I was like, LA is so beautiful. It's like, well, Westwood, yes, Erica. Did you see Hollywood or downtown? My heart was pulled to this city. I just knew that I needed to be here. So no. And actually, when I was supposed to move to LA, the week before, I developed a disease in my eye. And I still have it to this day. And my parents were like, maybe you should push off your move like a month or so. Let's get this figured out. And I said, no. I need to be out there now. I started building these contacts. They know that I'm coming in a month. No, I will get an eye doctor out in LA. And that's what I did. So I was determined.
And not only that, but it was 2008.
Yes.
So the economy was unraveling.
Yes.
Things were turbulent.
Yes. I didn't really feel the effects of that until 2009, because I moved towards the end of 2008. And booked that first show so quickly. And then the first show, we did a season, and then it was canceled. And so after that show was canceled and then I was unemployed, it was almost like, because I booked that show so quickly, I didn't have time to be super confused and alone in LA yet, because I had worked so quickly. And then after that show was canceled and the economy was crashing, and it was incredibly difficult. It was the worst year of my life. I mean, I really struggled.
Right, and I think you've talked about that in your book, and we're hoping to maybe cover that. I just want to go back to one quick thing, and I think that is that something you expected to book a show so fast, or because you had the one contact who seemed dependable, you felt that was something that was definitely going to happen? I mean, is that normal to get some work this fast?
I mean, I don't think I had any expectations in terms of time. I will say, that's something, because I was so passionate about my dreams of working in television, I never considered a time frame. I never said, I need to make this happen in 6 months, or I need to make this happen in 5 years. A lot of people give themselves that deadline, and in my mind, I never did. So I never had any timeline expectations. I was just so excited to be in LA. I mean, I was also terrified once I got here, and I didn't really know people here, so I was very alone. I mean, it was a pretty challenging time, and I was absolutely terrified in the beginning, but I just knew that I was excited. I knew I wanted to be here, so I didn't really have any expectations of when or how it was going to happen.
What if it's been 5 or 10 years and someone's not any closer to their quote-unquote dream, and they come here from somewhere else?
I think that question has nuance, because I've worked with a lot of people who have been here for 5 or 10 years who feel nowhere near their dreams and who are really struggling. But if we're really honest, it's not like absolutely nothing has happened in 5 or 10 years. So maybe they're not where they want to be yet. They haven't booked that big TV show yet if they're an actor, or, they haven't booked that big project, whatever their craft is. But I don't think I've ever met any artist out here who literally has not done a single thing in their career in 5 or 10 years, unless they got a day job that became their sole, priority. And then they just worked on, let me get a promotion at my day job. Let me try to move up here. And that becomes the priority. So the only time I've ever seen like literally nothing happen is when the day job becomes the priority over the dream, and they kind of let the dream go for all those years. But of my clients that I've worked with, I think it's important to celebrate what you have achieved, and to take, even if you're not where you want to be and it's been years, take a look at what you've actually done, even if it feels small to you, because I think that if you can start shifting your focus onto what you have done instead of what you haven't, it'll help you feel more confident. It'll help you feel, just better energy. You'll feel proud of yourself. You'll feel better. And so I think that will lead to more things happening. Now, that being said, when I work with people, there's so many things that we can take a look at why are you not where you want to be yet? And so we can take a look at what are the strategies that you either haven't tried at all, or that you have been procrastinating, that's a big thing, or that, there's so many pieces. Sorry, I feel like this is gonna be a long answer, but there's so many pieces to it. It's like, with the strategy piece, it's like, are there things that you haven't tried? And then if there are, let's take a look at why, right? And that all comes down to your belief system. The fears that you have, the doubts that you have, whether or not you believe in yourself. And that can get very nuanced as well. We get deep into what is really, truly holding you back from doing some of these strategic moves that you really haven't done yet. And then another thing that I've noticed with some of my clients is that the longer you have been in the industry, and I always say Hollywood, but I don't say Hollywood as in the location. I call the industry Hollywood. So the longer you've been in Hollywood, if you've been in Hollywood for 5 or 10 years, you end up having more limiting beliefs than somebody who is brand new. Because someone who is brand new, they're so green and they're so naive that they take more risks because they're not afraid of doing the wrong thing because they don't know what the wrong thing is. Whereas someone who's been here for a long time and has been in the industry for a long time, you know more about how the industry works, and you might know more about like behind the scenes and what relationships are important and what you need to be doing. And then because of that, you lose your sense of risk taking and being bold and putting yourself out there, you know, in a, I hate to say in a risky way, but it's all about risk taking. You know, it's all about putting yourself out there and taking risks. And so the longer you've been in Hollywood, the more rules you are trying to live by. But the thing is that for every rule in Hollywood, there's always an exception. So you don't necessarily want to use these rules to hold you back. And when I say rules, just for an example, in the industry, you know, some of my actor clients, when they are wanting to, if they need to get a new agent or a new manager, one of the rules in Hollywood is you should never contact representation and reach out to them during pilot season, right? There's like certain times of the year that's busier, maybe the beginning of episodic or, you know, when pilot season is going on, and you're not supposed to reach out. Right? And so it's just because you know how the industry works. You've been in the industry a long time. You know that there's a pilot season. You know that people are really busy during pilot season. But there's always going to be an exception to that rule. That rule is not really set in stone. And so if you follow that rule because you think you have this knowledge about how the industry works and you want to be good and follow these rules that you think you know, in that process, you are stopping yourself from taking a risk. And I've had many clients book agents during pilot season and then are able to go out for pilot season. So that's just a little example, you know, of, I think, some of the things that hold people back in Hollywood. The more they know, the more it tends to hold them back. And then also with that, there's a third part of this that I've really noticed with some of my clients is that the more you know, the more boxes you try to fit into. And I feel like that's just a big thing in Hollywood that a lot of people struggle, no matter if you're a writer, a director, working behind the scenes somehow, an actor. You know, even my production designer boss a couple years ago fell into that of like, how can I, I do drama and they don't think I can do comedy. And so I have found that a lot of people get stuck in these boxes because they're trusting other people to tell them what box they fit into. You know, like with actors, it all starts in the beginning with headshots. I've seen this so many times where an actor is told to put their headshot on Facebook and ask everyone on Facebook, what roles can you see me as with this headshot? You know, what shows do you see me in according to this headshot? And that's a super common thing, right? And if they're not asking their Facebook friends, they're asking their agents, their managers, their teachers. But every time you do that, you are asking somebody else to tell you how to live your dream. And you're letting somebody else dictate what roles you go out for, what projects you get to be a part of. And you completely lose your voice. And so I think that when people struggle in the 5 to 10 year range, I think that sometimes, depending on the person, plays a part where all of these years, maybe they've been trying to pursue the industry in these boxes that they were told they should be in, but it never feels good and it never feels aligned. And so they struggle. I have one of my clients really struggle with that. And, she's done such beautiful work as we work together for the past 2 years. And she's really come into her own, she's really connected with who she really is now and who she wants to be and not who Hollywood has been telling her to be all these years. And then that leads to more exciting opportunities because you're more confident and standing in your own more often. And, that will bleed into the work that you do. Even though it sounds counterintuitive, like, oh, Erica, but Hollywood loves the boxes. Stepping out of that is somehow going to help you succeed. I think yes. I think it's about alignment and being yourself 100%. I think that will always lead to more success.
I love what you're saying. What if we can't accurately see ourselves? Because I knew someone who was auditioning and she was doing well and she was about to turn 30, which when you look back at it from an older age is not old at all. But a friend, or so she thought, said, oh, let me see your headshots. And so she showed this friend, and the friend said, oh, and he gave her this feedback. He said, look, you're getting near 30, so you're going to want to aim for mom roles. So maybe tone down the sexy factor a little bit. And that was sort of eye-opening to this person, because they still saw themselves as this, not sex kitten, but they just saw themselves as not as the mom. And so I'm just wondering, how much is it that we're blinded by ourselves because we can't really see ourselves accurately sometimes? Or was she allowing this person to really tell her how to be?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. And I'm sure that, every agent or casting director or whatever will disagree with me. But I think that the more we buy into the boxes, the more we are helping perpetuate the problem. And so I think that, with the rise of streamers like Netflix and Hulu and Amazon, we are getting to see more complex stories, which is amazing, because with the networks of ABC, NBC, Fox, those are likely following formulas that have worked before. And they're a little more stereotyped when it comes to characters and content and, and story. But because there's so much more content now available with the streaming, I really do feel that we are finally moving into an area of Hollywood where we are getting more complex storytelling. And so to me, like the mom, right? You turn 30 and then you need to play the mom. It's like, could you be a super complex character that happens to have a child? Right? And so I think that we need to stop letting Hollywood define us as the mom. Even if that feels hard, even if you feel like you're getting the advice from someone trusted who's been in the industry, I think it is partly on us to stop perpetuating those kinds of things that happen. Like the client that I was talking about, she just came out as non-binary. And that can be really scary as an actor, because she's having to explore with her representation what that means in terms of what roles she wants to go out for. But for her to even have that conversation with her representation, she is breaking through the boxes and the Hollywood stuff, of stereotypes. And she is challenging it because she is saying, this is who I am. This is who I know that I am. And so let's explore what kind of complex roles I can play. So I guess to answer your question about, finding ourselves if we feel like maybe we've lost ourselves, I think you have to begin by tuning out everything, tuning out the noise. Don't listen to me. Don't listen to other people. You have to get back to yourself and what your dream truly is. The very first chapter of my book, I invite people to write down everything they would love to happen in their career, everything that you dream of. Get back to that dream you had in your heart when you were a kid, or whenever it was that you decided you wanted to pursue this dream. Get back to that and connect to that. And really, some of my clients too, they'll study, they'll do some research and watch, some shows that they really love and start to explore what excites them. When you watch this, do you feel really excited because you'd love to play a complex role like this person? So I think that process involves, you reconnecting with your own intuition and tuning out the noise and get really true to who you are and decide that you are worthy and are capable of succeeding as who you are, even if others tell you, no, you need to play the mom, or no, you need to fit in this box.
Erica, what's the biggest obstacle you've had to overcome in your own life?
That's a good one. My biggest obstacle for sure that I have had to overcome that I'm still working on is my self-worth and, my struggle with self-worth. I've done a lot of work to try to heal that and work on that. And I think that being an artist in Hollywood requires you to put yourself out there in a way that most people won't really have to do in their lifetime if they weren't pursuing a big dream, if they weren't trying to do something challenging. It requires a lot of you. And, through rejection and also through, depending on what your job is in the industry, what your craft is, it can feel so personal, like what you are putting out, your work that you are putting out, it's like you, right? It's attached to you. So I think that, I tend to attract a lot of clients who are like myself. And I think a lot of artists in general struggle with self-worth, more so because it's on display so much more often than maybe other people who aren't working in an industry like Hollywood would have to, face, essentially. Which I guess it's a good thing. It's a good thing that we need to, that I need to work on this and that I need to get better. But it's really been my biggest obstacle because I think that it impacts everything I do. It impacts how I put myself out there, how I ask for things that I want. If I, come across as someone who believes they're worthy of what they want, or, I talk to my clients a lot about how a lot of artists come across as desperate in the, please choose me, please choose me. Am I good enough? Tell me I'm good enough. And I think a lot of us, struggle with that. So I myself have struggled with that as well. And I think especially shifting into my coaching business where I have to build a business on me, where I'm the brand. And it's been a whole extra layer of me working through some self-worth stuff, I guess you could say. But that's definitely been my biggest obstacle.
I'm wondering if struggles with self-worth actually propel someone to go pretty far, because when I've done like little bits of research on a lot of people, whether it's acting, music, whatever, I find a lot of them have a missing parent.
Interesting.
And I think that causes people to do interesting things. And so I'm wondering if that almost propels people to go further, where someone who doesn't, it's more safe, and so, oh, okay, I didn't get this, well, that's all right. But somebody who really is like obsessed with it, it actually, that self-worth sort of wound actually makes them rise up more. I hope I'm making sense here.
No, you're making perfect sense. I mean, Tony Robbins talks a lot about the idea of if you grew up without a lot of trauma or obstacles or issues, you're almost in a worse spot trying to achieve big goals. He's, because of exactly what you're talking about, this like safe, comfortable kind of bubble. And a lot of people, look at people like Oprah, who had an incredibly challenging childhood, right? So a lot of the times that people who grew up with a lot of obstacles or potentially a lot of trauma, it does propel them. It does ignite a fire perhaps, or helps them succeed. I think with self-worth particularly, it could totally go in that direction. But I find, at least with the clients that I work with, is that more often than not, it actually does hold people back from taking bigger risks or putting themselves out there in a bigger way. And so they do it kind of in a safe way of, and I myself struggle with this, and I know that I can catch myself when I do this. Sometimes I'll, make a post for my business or something, and I'll do it to an audience that I know already loves and accepts me. And so, I think that if you doubt yourself and you don't feel worthy of what you want, it usually ends up holding you back. So like if people procrastination really has nothing to do with laziness and everything to do with resistance. And a lot of times when people procrastinate, it's really truly because they don't feel worthy of the thing that they're trying to make happen. So I do feel like, I think it can definitely go in the direction that you're talking about. And I think other obstacles and trauma absolutely does propel somebody forward. But a lot of times with self-worth, it holds us back from, going after the big things that we want.
Right. Yeah, I'm thinking of like Marilyn Monroe, and the lack of self-worth probably took her very far, but it also could have taken her down, unfortunately.
Yeah, I mean, I guess too, if you don't have a strong sense of self or a strong self-worth, you're going to let a lot of people tell you how to live your life, tell you, back to these like Hollywood boxes, like for example, if you don't have a strong self-worth, maybe you do end up booking projects, booking shows, booking features, but none of them feel aligned. Like you don't actually feel happy, you feel miserable, right? Because you let somebody else tell you what you should feel or what you should go after because you didn't feel that you were worthy of the things that you really want.
So Tony Raw, I guess maybe I have heard that from him before, but so you've heard him say that it's actually not an impediment to having had like sort of the safe upbringing, but or maybe it is. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't want to butcher his words and say it incorrectly. I'm just recalling, my memory of what he said. But that was like, I have remembered that because it's interesting. Like, I am someone who is incredibly determined and ambitious. But I did have somewhat of a comfortable life. And sometimes I wonder if that propelled me, actually, this is like a totally different topic, but if that propelled me in a way where like I feel less scared to go after certain things or to take some risks because I feel like I still have a safety net of my family. Like I have a good family life, so I feel like I still have this safety net. So maybe it's less scary for me than other people. But I don't know. From what I remember of what he said, I'm pretty sure he did say that, people that struggled more in their childhood or in their lives kind of have that one up on, I don't know, maybe being ambitious or pursuing your goals.
What's the biggest challenge you've helped one of your clients through?
One of the biggest challenges that I have helped my clients with, and this probably doesn't sound very sexy, but I feel like I feel very fortunate to connect with people who are struggling in their careers and are really down about it. And the fortunate part comes with how I get to help them. Not that I'm so glad that people are struggling. That maybe came out wrong. But I've been very fortunate to connect with these people who feel really down about their careers because maybe it has been some time and they're not where they want to be yet. And so sometimes people come to me where they're depressed and they're really feeling down. And by the end of the time we're working together, they feel happy again. They feel excited again in their career. They feel hopeful. And that energy switch is so crucial to what comes next in terms of their strategic moves and what opportunities come their way. Like it really does help them bring in a new level up opportunity. And so I think, like I've had clients who are on the verge of quitting and I'm like one of their last resorts, And so I think for me, that's one of the most challenging things that I've helped clients with, but I think that is so rewarding because it's so awesome to see people who've started feeling really down and really depressed about their career, who now, like one of my new clients, we're only like a month in and she's already feeling so excited and hopeful. And that is just so awesome. I just feel so fortunate to be able to help people. Like, I feel like one of my superpowers is helping people believe in themselves and really seeing what's possible. And so I feel honored to kind of relight that spark for people and help them get back to what's possible and get back to their dream.
Well, it's like dating, like when you're in a relationship, all of a sudden now all these people are attracted to you. When you weren't, no one would call, nothing happened. Yeah. But then all of a sudden you give off this energy of like, I don't really need it that much or whatever. And I think that the
desperation goes away.
Yeah, something happens, and whether it's dating or business or whatever. But I don't know if it's the same for some of what you've talked about.
A little bit, for me, it's about the energy. And it's about getting in alignment with the energy of the thing that you desire. So if you're feeling really down and really low, which is normal and happens all the time, you're not likely to attract exciting new opportunities, right? It's like if you're feeling like really low and you're right here, and these opportunities that you want are up here, you're not in alignment with them. And so when you start to feel good again and inspired and excited, it brings you up here. And now suddenly you are in alignment with these new opportunities. And I think from like a slightly more tangible way to explain this is that when you are feeling really down and really low, you are problem oriented, right? And I know that I've been this way. When I went through my really challenging year, 2009, and I was really depressed, my mom would suggest solutions to me. And she would think of ideas to help me. And I would say no to everything. I would shoot down everything. I was just not in the energy of accepting help or accepting a solution because I was feeling so low. And so when you're feeling hopeful and excited again, suddenly it's like, oh, there's opportunity everywhere. I see solutions everywhere. So your belief system and your energy, it's all controlling the opportunities might have existed around you the whole time, but you just didn't see them. I always talk about the example of the FedEx logo. Do you know the FedEx logo?
So I would know the colors is like
the purple and the orange.
Yeah,
and do you know that there's like the hidden arrow in between the E and the X of FedEx in the white space?
Maybe I don't know.
So I say this because a lot of people tend to know about the arrow. And so if you don't know about the arrow, go look at the FedEx logo. And so it's in the negative space, the white space between the E and the X.
Okay.
And that was intentionally done because FedEx is about, movement. And so there's also a little hidden baking spoon in the lowercase e that most people don't know.
Really? Okay.
And the idea is that even if you didn't know about that arrow and that baking spoon, they were always there. You might have looked at that logo 100 times and you didn't see that because you didn't know it was there. You didn't know to look. But it doesn't mean that they didn't exist. They were always there. So it's like when you are feeling hopeful and excited and you're feeling good, you know to look for opportunities that are always around you. But if you're feeling depressed and low, you're probably not even going to see them, even though they might be right in front of you.
What do you do for people that they can't necessarily do for themselves?
Two things, I think. One is, like I talked about, I think that I help people believe in themselves and believe in what's possible in a way they never have before. I feel very proud. I feel like it is my superpower, to really help people expand their view of what is truly possible. And the other thing that I do that people might not be able to do for themselves is to see their blind spots, right? So I can usually have a conversation with them and fairly quickly determine where their blind spots are in terms of like what's holding them back. If they talk to me about their strategy, I can pick out what's really holding them back in that strategy, what the limiting belief is. Just the other day, I was on a podcast interview and I was coaching the one of the hosts, and he talked about how him and his producing partner, they live somewhere else in the United States, and they're working on moving to Las Vegas. And they had this whole plan about why that was a good decision. And I said, tell me why you're moving to Las Vegas instead of LA. Tell me why you're not moving to LA, right? And so they told me all these reasons that were really fear-based. They didn't believe that they could afford to live here. They didn't believe they'd find any work. They didn't, they had all these stories that they decided on that created their decision. And then that decision leads to dream adjacent, right? And so I think that we can't always see our blind spots. That's why I work with coaches too. I have people help me with my blind spots. And so we can't see them on our own, because our mind is really good at justifying our decisions. Our mind is really good at coming up with reasons or excuses about why what we're doing is the right thing to do or the best thing for us. But a lot of times, we're holding ourselves back. And so I help people with that and really helping them recognize where their blind spots may be.
How do you define success?
My definition of success has changed over the last 2 years, and I would not be surprised if it changed again in the next coming years. I think that for the last 10 years, I really defined success by the projects I was booking and the money I was making. And once I got those things that I desired, then I realized, wait a minute, I really just want to be happy. Not that some of those things didn't make me happy, but now I'm really chasing, for lack of a better word, what makes me happy. And that's, to me, more important. I think that I'm still weaving into my, one of my coaches was like, oh, so you say that's what, or maybe my therapist said this, you say that success is just about what makes you happy, but you're still kind of living in this world where you want to make a certain amount of money and you want to book certain projects. And so I think that I have one foot in that world and one foot in this world. But for me, it's so much more about being happy and helping people. And so I'm trying to refocus my energy on that, because I think it's really easy to get caught up, especially in the social media world, where we're comparing ourselves to other people all the time and what their lives look like and where they're spending their money and what projects. I think, a lot of my actor clients, we talk about how their least favorite question ever is, have I seen you in anything? Or are you working on anything now? People feel very insecure about that question. And so I just, I myself have gotten very caught up in what projects I'm working on so that I can tell other people, and then I will be perceived as successful. And being perceived as successful is more important than how I actually feel doing these things. And so, so now I'm just trying to let go of that and focus on what makes me happy. Like, I think that, it's like if we look back at our lives, I don't know, I would rather be happy and doing things that feel good and excite me than constantly worrying about trying to compare myself to others and what it looks like to other people.
What do you think about the fact that that's a great place to be in, but some people might need to have kissed the ring, so to speak, and then realize, you know what, it wasn't that great and I actually just want to be happy. But they needed that experience to know I actually was up here for a little bit and I decided I wasn't happy, but I needed to know what that felt like.
Yeah, I think that we all are on our own journey. We all are on our own path. If I had to experience that to learn this lesson, it's not even necessarily a lesson, it's just a redirect for myself. And so I don't think there's anything wrong with, like, some people just have to live out their journey and live out their own experiences then to decide what they want. I think that's what we're always collecting data based on how we feel. So everything that we do, we're collecting data and then we're reevaluating. So I think that's totally okay. But what I do sort of direct people in my book is to, and again, this is something that I feel like that I've been working on, is to stop setting goals that are based on validation. Right? So try to at least start chasing the joy, because I think that all those things that you think you want, they're going to come anyway, right? You can be happy and get all those things, but we don't necessarily always know why we want those things. And so I think it is important to take a look at, like, well, why do I want that? Like, I remember I have a dream of buying a house. It used to be in the hills, but now I want one in the Palisades or, with ocean view as opposed to city view. And I remember someone said to me, oh, do you want that because of how it'll look? And I said, oh my gosh, no, that's not part of this dream for me at all. I want it because I have family back on the East Coast and I want rooms for them to come visit for extended periods of time so that I can be, I'm very close with my family and I hate that they're so far away and I don't get to see them very often. And I'm also very sensitive to my surroundings, that I want surroundings that inspire me and excite me. And so it's really what it's about. And so I think I think if you're feeling like, well, I want the money or I want the accolades, it's just about getting really honest with yourself about why you want those things. Everything that we say we want, it's because of how we think we're going to feel when we get it. So if you want an Oscar, why? What do you think you're going to feel when you get that Oscar? And I think that if you can break down those feelings, it's more important to sort of chase those feelings or to try to feel those now than necessarily the label that you think is going to give you those feelings, if that makes sense. So I think, like I said, in my book, it's really about, like, set any goal that you want. There's nothing wrong with any of them. But if you're chasing them for validation to make you feel good, to make you feel more worthy or more deserved, it probably isn't going to feel the way that you think it's going to feel. It's not going to solve the inner problem, right? Like, none of the external things that we create for ourselves or that we get are never going to solve an internal problem.
I think most of this is validation from others or self-validation?
Validation from others.
You think that matters more to most people?
I think a lot of us make decisions based on how others will perceive it. How, like, for example, everyone and their mother in this industry says that they want to work on Netflix, on a Netflix project. And, there might be some reasons behind that in the terms of, well, they do great work. They tell complex stories and I'm interested in the stories that they're telling. But a lot of people, especially the actors that I work with or the directors, the writers, they say they want Netflix because Netflix is a huge, well-known entity right now. And if they book something Netflix, they can then post it on social media or they can tell people, hey, I booked a Netflix show. And that makes them feel successful because they're perceived as successful because it's a network or a streamer that everybody knows, right? But what if what was really important to you that you booked a project that told a meaningful story, that impacted people's lives, and that was really fun to create, and it felt really great. Like you were working with great people, collaborating with great people, and the whole experience just felt good. Well, what if you could get that experience at ABC or on Hulu or another smaller now, because I talk about one of my best experiences in Hollywood was a show that was on ABC Family, which is now Freeform, and I don't think many people are like, oh, I want to work on Freeform. Like everyone's like, I want to work on Netflix. It's not maybe as sexy. Maybe they don't have quite as many viewers, but it was the most fun I ever had on a show. And we were telling a meaningful story and there were really amazing crew and cast members. It was just a really good experience. So yeah, I think that this is a long way to say, I think it is about chasing validation from others and how we are perceived by others.
And does that go back to sort of that boxes thing that you said, like being in LA, you think that there's these certain rules in these boxes, and it's the same thing about like, oh, you're just doing the Score network? I've never heard of it. Yeah, oh, okay, yeah, no, but if you were somewhere else, oh, wow, you're on a TV show? How cool.
Right.
But here, there's these levels.
Right, the hierarchy. Yeah. I don't know if it's necessary. I guess the box is in a way where you're like boxing yourself into what your dream has to look like. Like my dream has to look like me working for Netflix. So I guess in a way, but I do think, that people don't realize that it's probably going to be a more enjoyable experience if you intentionally try to create a good experience for yourself, like a show that you love working on, that you're doing meaningful work, than whatever the label of the network or the studio is. Because, look, like I've known series regulars who have quit and who just like after a few seasons weren't feeling fulfilled anymore. It wasn't like a story they felt like was meaningful in their lives, And so that happens, like you might get the thing that you think you want, like you might get Netflix and then it not be a good experience. I'm not trying to put that out there. I'm sure like there's a lot of amazing experiences on Netflix, but my point is like get clear about how you want the experience to feel and what you want the experience to look like. Like I say in my book, like make a list of everything that you want in the next project you want to book or whatever goal you're working towards. Write the list of everything you think Netflix is going to give you. Right? Write down everything you think it's going to give you and then take away Netflix at the top. And then, but still chase your list, right? So you're still really going after what you truly want, but you're allowing it to look however it looks.
How do you help people with the part of success where they want what other people have?
I mean, that is happening all the time. And I have found myself getting caught up in that too. I think that when people post things on social media, I think that's like really a lot of where it comes from as opposed to seeing it in actual real life. I think that when we see somebody's highlight reel on social media, we are putting a whole story behind that post about what it means and how it must feel for them to have that thing, right? So if somebody posts a picture of themselves driving a Porsche, a very fancy car, and they're smiling in it and they're like, yeah, they look cool. You might then create this whole story about what that means for that person and how their life must be so amazing and it must feel so good for them and wow, they have so much money. And we create this whole narrative about what it means when we see them having this thing. And we're like, well, we want those feelings. I want to feel financially stable. I want to feel wealthy. I want to feel excited about a new purchase. I want to have a car like that, right? So we think that they're feeling a certain way when they have something. And then we want to feel that way. And so we think the way we feel it is to try to get the same thing they have. And it's so easy to get caught up in whatever we think, people are, or whatever we're seeing people have, even if it's a booking, if you book a job or you have an audition or something, I think that if you see someone post online that, I'm trying to think of something that maybe I've thought I wanted, but I didn't actually want. Like, for example, one of my clients said, you know what, they're an actor. And they were like, you know what, every actor wants to be series regular. They think it's like hitting the lottery, financial lottery, because it's a lot of money and it's consistent work. And one of my clients was like, you know what, I don't think I want to be series regular at this time in my life. Like, because you usually have to wake up at like 4 a.m. You're there all day. It's a very long day. You have to wake up. She's like, I don't know if I kind of like waking up at 8 o'clock and say, I don't know if that's really what I want in my life right now. So she had to, get honest about, wait a minute, what makes me happy? What would make me happy now? So I think social media plays a big role in it, but it's really what we decide it means. Right? What we decide it means that this person booked this project or has this opportunity. We also don't know the truth about what it means to that person or what they're really feeling on the other side of it. Maybe they're like posting, I had this amazing audition for Netflix. Wow, I'm so lucky. I have such a great life. But really they're feeling like maybe it was like a 2-line role and it was something that they're not actually excited about, but they're trying to tell the world that they had this Netflix audition. And then people that see it are like, oh man, they have this great life. They're getting these Netflix auditions. And then we create the story about what we think they're feeling or what, So I think it comes down to what are the feelings you want to feel when you get the thing you want, and stop assuming that every single person who has something feels that exact way. Because I think we're attaching those feelings to what other people have.
How do you help clients who are hyper-focused on other people's achievements?
I help them get reacquainted with what their true dream is. I think it's so easy to look at what everybody else is doing and to decide that that's what success means, and so that's what I should go after. But we really want to reconnect with what our true dream is. Like, what is it that we truly want? Like, tune out the noise. Stop looking at what other people are doing. Stop looking at social media, what people are doing on social media, what they're posting, and really reconnect to what is it that you truly want. I have this line in my book that I was actually really proud of. I think it's a good line where I said, when you are trying to replicate someone else's magic, you are taking yourself out of the running for your own. And I think that's so important. I think that as long as you are chasing somebody else's dream or you're trying to, have or do what other people are having and doing, you are cutting yourself off from your own fulfilling, really cool journey, really amazing, magical experience. It's going to be so much more fulfilling if you reconnect to what it is that you want and go after it in a way that feels good to you, as opposed to comparing yourself to everybody else and trying to replicate what other people are doing. I think as long as you are trying to replicate somebody else's path, you're going to get stuck. I think we all have our own path, and we need to find our own path, especially in an industry like Hollywood, where there's no one way to do anything. If you lined up 10 successful people or 100 successful people and asked them, how did you break in or how did you get to where you are, you're probably going to hear 100 different stories. So it's important that we leave room for us to find our own story. And that comes from really letting go and disconnecting from what you see everybody else doing.
What's your definition of a high achiever?
That's such a good question because I use that term all the time. My definition of a high achiever is somebody who, first of all, has a desire for something beyond the base level. You know, like people say, oh, I want to be a working actor. And I'm like, really? Like, that's such a base level thing. I understand you want to pay your bills from acting, and sure, that would be amazing. But like, that's one, you're going to want so many more things, beyond that. So I think like number one, it's about the desire for something greater than what's comfortable for most people. And then I think that, a lot of my work in terms of helping people become high achievers is about how you think about what you're doing, what your belief system is behind what you are doing, so that it leads to higher level risks, higher level actions and strategies that then usually lead to higher level opportunities. But so, in my book, I talk about the 10 pillars of the high achiever, and it's really about how you view what is possible and how you view what you're capable of, what you are able to do. So if you're a high achiever, you view the world in a way that you believe that anything's possible. And you make decisions based on your desires and based on your dreams instead of based on fear. You do things that are not based on those Hollywood rules. You really go beyond what I call like the most people pool. So you're not doing what most people are doing. You're doing what the smaller pool of high achievers are doing, which is, you're really looking at the world in a different way and your own dreams in a different way. Like if you have a dream of winning an Oscar or being a millionaire, you believe that not only that it's possible, but that it will happen for you. And just that belief changes the entire trajectory, of what potential you have in front of you.
So base level, let's say filmmaker, screenwriter, that would be, they want to work on a few projects, not they're looking to
No,
win.
I mean, like, maybe my working actor example wasn't the greatest because I'm definitely not trying to judge anybody's like level, but I think that, like beyond student films, beyond unscripted, if we're talking about Hollywood for screenwriters or for any other kind of craft, I think that beyond what most people strive for, because I think that striving for like a base level keeps people safe. I think that most people that have dreams of succeeding in Hollywood in this industry, their dreams are beyond student films, or their dreams are beyond, just paying their bills. I think a lot of people dream of telling really interesting stories. I think people love storytelling and the art of storytelling. A lot of the people that I work with, they want to make an impact on people's lives. They want to make a difference in the world through storytelling. I think that goes beyond, I just want to be able to pay all my bills from my craft. I think everybody wants to be able to pay all their, bills from their craft, but I think the high achievers, they want more. They want to go beyond that. They don't want to stay safe and comfortable at whatever level is safe and comfortable.
What are some of the Achilles heels of a high achiever?
Interesting question. One of the things that I personally have struggled with, and I consider myself a high achiever, is the fact that I'm kind of always reaching for something, right? And so I think that might be an Achilles heel of the high achiever, where that bar is always moving. And so that, like, one thing that I've been working on is being more present. Being more present in where I am and trying to enjoy the moment, because my eyes are usually always on the next thing. I'm always reaching. I'm always on that next thing. I always want to know my next goal. Right now I'm in this period where I don't really know for sure what that next goal is for me. And I've never experienced that before. It's very uncomfortable. to have to just sit here and be present and wait for it to sort of come or be inspired. And so I think that's probably a high achiever's Achilles heel, is that, they're not really sometimes struggling with being present and enjoying the journey and enjoying where they are, because their eyes are always on the next thing.
Is there no other way around that as a high achiever? Is that just part of the journey, so to speak?
Yeah, I mean, I don't want to put my own struggles on anybody else and make a blanket statement and say that, all high achievers will, struggle with that. I think everybody, we all have our own stuff, So yeah, I think, everyone's going to have their own struggles, but it's really about how willing are you to do the work to better yourself and to get where you want to go.
How do you train someone to believe that their success is inevitable?
I drill it in them 100 times until they believe it. I think that whenever you're trying to take on a new belief, sometimes our subconscious mind needs proof. And so I try to tell people what that means in tangible terms. Like, why is your success inevitable? And what will happen if you don't believe your success is inevitable, right? Like, if you don't believe your success is inevitable, it is very likely that you have a plan B, that you have some sort of backup plan, that you have set up a timeline for yourself where if this doesn't happen in 5 years, I'm going to move back home or I'm going to do something else. Right? You're coming up with like insurance because you don't believe 100%. It's like a prenup for your dream because you don't believe 100% that it's going to work out. And what happens is that when you don't believe your success is inevitable, you don't take the big risks. You don't put yourself out there in the same way because you don't believe that it can happen, right? So it really impacts the strategy or the actions that you end up taking. So I try to help people by showing them where their current belief of not believing their success is inevitable is leading them and how that's playing out. And I like to inspire people to show them like why I think their success is inevitable. And I think that if you can take away the lottery feel of succeeding, right? Because I think that you'll hear often, oh, succeeding in Hollywood, that's like winning the lottery. So for example, one of my clients, I think this is in my book, she said that that was something that she had heard a lot, that good luck trying to make it in Hollywood, that's like winning the lottery. And so I said to her, can you count on your hand? Can you name any people you know who have won the lottery? And she was like, I don't think I know anyone who's won the lottery. I said, okay, now can you count on your hand and name me people who have succeeded in Hollywood? And she listed like 10 people that she personally knew who were doing well in the industry. And so, because we want to give our subconscious brain, the subconscious part of our mind, some sort of tangible proof to hold on to. And so when we go through that, it's like, oh, okay, so it's actually not as hard as winning the lottery. It's not that random because I can name so many more people that have succeeded, right? So suddenly your subconscious goes, oh, okay, that's different. So we start looking for proof of why is your success inevitable? Like, why is it inevitable that you will succeed? Well, if you take a look at, all the people who are successful and who are, if we take a look at their actions or everything that they've done, and if you're doing the same things, it is inevitable that it will lead to success. And that success might look different to every person and however you define success. But, I really try to help people retrain their brain to understand that succeeding in Hollywood doesn't have to be this insane, unlikely thing. I think that we kind of come into it with that notion. And so we want to train our brain to understand that that's not actually true.
Do you think some people might want to fail because it brings more sympathy, more people like you? If you're too successful, people won't like you.
That's an interesting question. I've never thought of it that way. I think a lot of people want to fail because if their subconscious mind does not believe that they can succeed, if they fail, they're proving it right. And people like to be right. So they like to say, see, told you I couldn't succeed, right? And so, like, I always used to give this example. Sorry, I'm giving so many actor examples. I work with a lot of actors, but, you know, if you don't believe that you 100% are going to succeed as an actor, you might take a day job that is a 9 to 5. And if you have a 9 to 5 day job, you can't really audition. I guess now it's a little different during the pandemic with self-tapes. Everything's self-tapes right now. But, you know, pre-pandemic and hopefully post-pandemic, auditions will be in person again, and they're going to be during the day, during the week, right? And so if you have a 9 to 5 job, you're taking this on because you think you're doing the responsible thing. And we could talk about day jobs is like a whole nother conversation where a lot of people have an idea in their mind that the only way to financially support themselves is through 9 to 5 work. But that's like a self-sabotaging move, right? And so then you're not getting auditions because you can't go on them unless you're calling out for a doctor's appointment every day. And then you end up, you know, a couple of years in and you're not succeeding in Hollywood. And then you can go, see, I was right. I'm not succeeding in this town, in this industry. So I think that people self-sabotage just to like prove their subconscious mind right. But there's so many reasons why people want to fail. That some people are afraid of success. They're afraid, you know, kind of what you're talking about. Are they afraid of like not being liked? But also, what does that mean in the dynamics of your family? You know, what will your family think if you succeed? What does that look like? You know, how will you feel if you're quote unquote more successful than your parents or, you know, someone that raised you or something? You know, people struggle with so many nuanced things about failing and succeeding. So I think there are many reasons, but those are a few.
Right. Or maybe if the brother or the sister was always the golden child and then the black sheep actually surpasses
yes.
them. That's a taboo, you know. It's not okay. So yeah, that's interesting. That people would be afraid of success like that. Because we would think, oh no, that wouldn't happen to me. No, I just, you know.
Yeah, and some people think that if I do succeed, there are other things in life I won't be able to have. You know, like if I'm successful in Hollywood, I won't be able to have a happy marriage and raise kids. You know, people have that fear sometimes of like, you know, the scheduling with Hollywood that I won't be able to have a family, things like that. So sometimes people self-sabotage because they're afraid that even if they do succeed, there are other things that they won't be able to have. Or that it'll, you know, negatively impact relationships.
That's true. Or the nanny will know my kids better than
right.
me. Yeah, right. What are some examples of star qualities?
Star qualities? I think one of the things that I outline, I have a whole chapter called Star Power, chapter 2. One of the examples that I give in the book is when you think about someone who is a star, like Taylor Swift, or Steven Spielberg, right? So it's not even necessarily a star as in they're a performer and they're in front of the camera. Someone that's a star in their industry. Who were they before they had any credits? Who was Taylor Swift before anybody knew her name? She was Taylor Swift, right? And so I think it's about how you show up in the beginning. And I talk about, you know, like we all have this greatness within us, and you don't need a resume or an IMDb credit or any other kind of validation to prove that you can be a star, you know, that you have greatness. I think that we all have greatness already within us. And so, you know, star power is about embracing that, connecting to your own star power that you have before a single person knows your name or before you have anything on your resume. You can still have that star power, but it's about showing up as the star now before waiting for somebody else to validate you and to say that you are a star or to say that you are great. It's about believing that in yourself now before you do anything.
Can you give me an example of a star quality that's kind of unknown, that would be unlikely, that you would never think that, you know, we think of someone with just amazing confidence, owns a room, head turner in so many ways, charming?
I think that For me, it's not even about necessarily those things. The confidence piece. It's about owning your dream, owning what you want, and deciding you are worthy of it. Because that will translate to risks that you take and actions you take. The example I give in my book is about Steven Spielberg and about his story about how he, basically broke in. He was able to get a meeting on the Universal Studios lot with Chuck Silvers, who I think was working in post, and he got to connect with him for 3 days. And he was so excited he got to be on the lot, and I think he got to show him like a short film he had made or something like that. And Chuck said, okay, well, the 3 days are up. I can't get a pass for you to come back onto the lot. If you want to come back, you'll have to kind of find your own way. I can't get you like a permanent pass. So Steven Spielberg was like, all right, I need to get back on this lot. I need to connect with these people. I need to show them my work. I need to get in front of them. So the next day, he shows up in a suit, holding a briefcase, goes up to the gate and just waves to the guy at the gate. And it looks like, he has the appearance of working there. And they just let him in. He didn't have to show a badge. That would probably not happen today because you really do need to have a drive on today. But what I love so much about that story is that he was taking a risk and being incredibly bold to try to create opportunity for himself. And he didn't wait until he had Jaws on his resume to feel confident enough to do that. He didn't wait until he was the Steven Spielberg that we know, because I think it's easy for people to go, oh, well, he's Steven Spielberg, he can do that. But he wasn't that Steven Spielberg that we know when he did that. So for me, it's examples like that. It's like, how do you show up in the beginning? Do you show up and take bold risks? Showing up like you are the star now. You don't have to wait until someone else deems you a star to take those kinds of risks and take those actions.
I like that. So, sorry, again, it's knowing that, so like owning your dream and saying that I am worthy of it.
Yes, and when you feel that way, what risks do you end up taking? Like, you know what I mean? Because I think that a lot of people in Steven Spielberg's position would never do something like that until they are at his now known level of success, right? Somebody wouldn't feel comfortable taking that big of a risk unless they already felt validated by Hollywood. Like one time, nothing ever really came of it, but there was some TV show filming on location near where I lived. And I saw the prop truck and it was open. And so I brought my business cards to the prop truck and there was no one there. And I just left my business cards on the floor of the prop truck. So it's like things like that. It's like, how do you show up? Like, can you be bold and show up in a way that most people would never do unless they already felt validated by the industry?
That's a great story. Yeah, I heard about someone else who had a business card and they were mad and they were in real estate and they're just like, forget this. And they threw them all in a parking lot and someone found one and said, I have a house to list.
Amazing,
So,
right?
yeah,
Look, I mean, like not every bold risk is going to be received with open arms, but if you're not taking those risks, you're never going to get the potential opportunities that could come from them.
Right. Because, this is a town where, there's all these pretty people and their accolades and people are bragging and they don't want to stay small. They want to just kind of like peacock feathers. And I think it's easy to be in a room, whatever your thing is, and hear that from the side, and you're like, what am I doing here? And then, but I like what you're saying, that if you just, all you have to do is just say, I'm owning, this is what I want to do, and I'm worthy of it. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't matter if this person, has this beautiful plumage that they're kind of showing the world. My thing is also going to matter.
You have the plumage too. It's just not visible yet. Like I really believe that we all have that greatness inside of us. I think it's internal. I think, the plumage that you're talking about comes from like external, IMDb credits or, prestige or celebrity or whatever. But to me, it's 100% an internal thing. It has nothing to do with the external. And you can have all those external things and still show up and feel imposter syndrome. And not feel worthy of being in the room that you're in. And that happens, all the time too. Look at, child stars, a lot of times where it doesn't pan out as they get older because it's like too much too soon. They weren't ready for it mentally, right? And so maybe they felt like an imposter or whatever. There's a million different reasons why that happens, but it's like, 75% of lottery winners end up going broke. And again, it's like this whole idea of like they weren't internally ready for the thing. So to me, that plumage that you speak of is really truly internal and not external.
Erica, I have a composite of someone I'd like you to have coach.
Cool.
So we'll give her the name of Crystal, and she has wonderful ideas, which she puts in notebooks. She's written 5 screenplays, but she ultimately feels like an imposter, especially since she hasn't been able to get any producers interested in her work, and she's had no luck with screenwriting contests. Her goal is to be a Hollywood screenwriter. Crystal has always done incredibly well at everything she's undertaken. She's a perfectionist, somewhat competitive, but her sense of self-worth is wrapped up in always being the best and always winning, which she's usually been successful at. She's feeling more and more that maybe her work isn't creative and interesting enough, and it's not original possibly. So she's feeling useless and maybe that she should stop, quote unquote, wasting her time trying to pursue this career, but she doesn't know what else to do. So how would you begin to work with Crystal?
Crystal, let's do this. Well, the very first question I would ask her, and I do have a process that I take my clients through that I'll share with you, but the very first question I would ask Crystal is, do you want to quit? Right?
Okay.
She's talking about potentially throwing in the towel. She doesn't think her work is getting her where she needs to go or where she wants to go, and so she's considering doing something else. Is that a true desire? Or is it, I don't feel like I'm good enough, I feel like I've failed, therefore I should do something else? I think, I joked with one of my clients because the other day she had a moment of like, oh, I want to quit. I think so many of our artists feel that from time to time on their journey. And then last week she got a very incredible audition opportunity. And she was really excited about it and she put so much work into it. And my whole comment to her was, oh, so you don't want to quit? So it's like somewhat of a rhetorical question because I think I know the answer is like, no, I don't want to quit. But I do think it's important for someone to say that out loud, for someone to really be honest and come to terms with what you truly desire. I mean, if you truly do desire to quit and try something else, that's okay too, but then we don't need to work together, right? So I think number one is really asking Crystal, is this something that you want to keep doing? Like, do you still have that whisper? Is that dream still calling to you? Is that why you're coming to me? Probably, So I think that's like important to establish right off the bat. And then before we dive into strategy and what's working and what's not working and what are new strategies you could be doing, I spend the first usually hour and a half with my clients on what is their belief system. What are the fears and doubts that are really holding you back? And I actually go through this in my book as well. My book kind of goes through a lot of the things that I do with my clients. So the first thing I will ask Crystal is, what do you want? So you say you want to be a Hollywood screenwriter. What does that look like? Do you want to sell scripts? Do you want to be a staffed writer on a show? Do you want to be a show creator? What does that really look like for you? Like, what is your dream? Do you want to be winning Emmys? You want to be working on features? And so I want to hear about it. I want to reconnect to her dream. I want to hear everything that she wants. And I would ask her, like, write a bulleted list of everything you desire. And we're just going to put out of our heads right now that maybe we don't think it's possible. We have no idea. It's not really happening. Just put all of that out of your head. Right now, I just want to know, what do you want? If you could have your dream, what is it that you desire? Because once we get really clear on what it is that she wants, that can really help us form a better strategy that's going to be more tailored to what she actually desires, right? Instead of creating a strategy based off of what other people are doing, right? I could easily go, oh, Crystal, you want to be a screenwriter? Here's the screenwriter path. Let's do this. No, I want to know, what are her specific dreams? Maybe she even has specific dreams of certain types of stories or certain genres. Like I've worked with some screenwriters who are super into the horror genre and that's all they want to do. So I want to hear about it. And so once she writes this list of everything that she desires, Then I go, okay, now tell me every doubt and fear you have about that list. And we really need to examine what are the beliefs in your mind right now in relation to this dream that you're trying to make happen. Because that belief system is going to control what you do next or what you've been doing, right? You know, like for example, when you said she hasn't had any luck with producers, my question would be, how many did you ask? If you don't believe your success is inevitable, that list is probably 5 to 10 people long. My clients are emailing 250 people, right? And so your belief system behind everything is going to control the actions you take and then inevitably the opportunities you get from those actions. You know, like a lot of people, and I've struggled with this myself. A lot of us, we stop short because we think it's not working, or we feel rejected, or we feel discouraged. And so we're not really going the extra mile. You know, we're not really taking those risks. We're not really doing everything we could be doing because we feel deflated. And that, you know, those discouraged beliefs, they will impact the lack of action that's happening. So I would take her through that list, and I would want to hear what's every fear. I was going to say fear and doubt in the same word. What is every fear? What is every doubt that comes up for you when you look at this list? And then we take every fear on that list and we flip it to create an affirmation so that your new belief system becomes the opposite of what you believed. So for example, if Crystal's like, well, I have a fear that this will never work out for me. Okay. What do you wish you believed? Well, I'm being Crystal here. Well, I wish that I believed that it would definitely work out. Okay, that becomes the new belief. My success is inevitable, right? And so we're flipping the fears. And so then at the end, you have these two lists side by side. You've got all the fears and doubts, and then you've got the opposite, you know, essentially affirmations of the new beliefs. And I always say, when you look at these two lists side by side, if you looked at them as two different people, person A and person B, what kind of career would person A have? With this list of fears and doubts, that's their belief system. What kind of career do you think they're going to have? And it's usually, well, they probably won't get very far. They're probably going to struggle. And then what about person B? These affirmations, this new belief system, what kind of career do you think they're going to have? And you know, it's usually, they're going to kick butt. They're going to do great. And the whole point of this is not to say you can never have these fears again. You know, I think the doubts and the fears, they're always going to be there. They might change over time, but the point is we want the second list to be in the driver's seat. So the fears and doubts, it's okay to have them. They're still going to hang out in the back seat of the car, but we want the affirmations, the new list, the new beliefs driving the show. And once you build that foundation and you really get clear about the belief system that you currently have and, you know, the belief system that you really need to move forward, then we can start to examine the strategy. Then I want to know, like Crystal, okay, tell me how many producers you've reached out to. Tell me how many agents and managers you've reached out to. Have you tried to get representation? Tell me, you know, I want to hear everything that she's done, and we can take a look about, okay, well, here's what I think a better strategy would be for you based on what you told me you desire, right? And then we can build a new strategy from there. But what I find, you know, especially you said that Crystal is perfectionist. And I just got to do a clubhouse the other day with someone who specializes in perfectionism, and I really learned a lot. You know, perfectionism holds us back. It's definitely one of those things that holds us back. You know, what we fear, and she was saying a lot of times it's also tied to self-worth. Like we think that we're only worthy if we're perfect, if our work is perfect. And if I feel like my work isn't perfect, then I'm not worthy. And if I never put my work out there or take the risks with my work that I really need to be taking, I don't have to confront whether I'm worthy or not, right? So tying your self-worth to perfectionism, we would dive deep, you know, into all of those things and take a look. And, you know, the other thing I would say, I just wanted to add, because you mentioned the festivals, there is no one way to succeed in Hollywood. right? And so if festivals is one door that you're knocking on, it's okay if it's not leading anywhere. There are still a million other doors that you can knock on. So I don't think that any single door is the be all end all. We don't have to create this story in our mind. And that's what we do. When we have a rejection, we create a story in our mind about what it means. So I would want to know, hey, Crystal, you haven't succeeded with festivals. What are you telling yourself that means? So, really diving deep into how you feel about what's been happening and how we can work on changing it, if that makes sense.
It does. Do you think people that fail are too busy saying no or too busy saying yes? Because you know how Shonda Rhimes talked about she had a year of saying yes?
Yeah.
And I think that's great. But in some ways you could say yes to things that could give you busy work too. But do you think as a rule though, most people who fail, they haven't said yes enough?
I don't think I would I usually don't like to make blanket statements over things like that. I call it absolutes, saying always or never, because I don't think anything is the same for everybody. So I think some people have trouble saying no and some people have, trouble saying yes. And it just, has to do with your specific situation. I had a client she was an actress and she already booked a lot of television. She had like 50 or so episodes already under her belt. At the co-star recurring level, maybe one or two guest stars, I forget. Maybe it was just all co-stars. And she really wanted to work on her next level. And so she ended up getting new representation. But one of the biggest things I worked with her on once she got this higher level representation was saying no to auditions and really getting clear about what her next level looks like and what she wants to say yes to and what she doesn't want to do anymore, what was part of her old level. So I think either way, I think people hold themselves back with the yes and the no.
Would you ever tell anyone that they weren't talented enough to do something professionally?
I would never tell someone that they're not good enough. Never. Because I had somebody tell me that in high school. And what I have learned working in Hollywood for now, it's like 13 years. Talent is only one piece of the puzzle. It's one piece. There are so many other qualities that you need to succeed outside of talent. And I think that if you care enough, talent is always something that you can work on. Craft, you get better through practice. And so you can always be in class. You can always be working with a coach. Like there's so many ways to get better in terms of your talent. And from a law of attraction standpoint, the law of attraction doesn't care if you're talented or not. And I hate to say that because I don't want to discourage people from taking their craft seriously. But have you ever watched a TV show and thought, ooh, that acting wasn't very good? Or that writing was, ooh, terrible, or listen to a song on the radio and thought, I feel like I could sing better than that person. My point is that talent is just one piece. And to me, that is not a deterrent if you're not the most amazing at your craft yet. I think that you can still win. I think you can still succeed. Now, from an integrity standpoint, I think you should be working on your craft, From an integrity standpoint, I think you should care about your craft and you should work on it and you should practice. I think some of the greatest artists in history are people that did it all the time. They practiced all the time. So I think you should absolutely be working on your craft. I just think that there are so many other qualities that you need to have out. Like I talk about this in my book where I say, going back to Crystal even, if you are cold emailing representation and you're trying to get representation, if you email 20 people and they either all say no or just don't even respond, your talent is not going to get you to keep going. It's your perseverance. It's your drive. It's your desire and your ambition, right? There's so many other qualities that you need to keep going in a moment like that. So I think that your talent, it only gets you so far. And if the talent is the only thing you have, it will most likely be a hobby and not a career. So I just will never tell somebody that. When someone told it to me, it's happened twice actually to me. And it was really soul crushing. You know, even in design school, when I tell the story, it's the first story I tell in the book, so sorry to spoil this, but, you know, when I first got to art school, or the design program at the college I was going to, I did really well on the first project, and the second project I almost failed. And the teacher said, "Oh, I guess you just got lucky on that first one." I will never forget that. I mean, I bawled my eyes out. I ran to the bathroom and cried. And I just thought, wow, like my mentor, this person who's supposed to teach me how to be good, is telling me that anything I've done well so far is chalked up to luck. And that was like so soul crushing for me. And then I went on to have a pretty incredible graphic design career in one of the hardest industries to work in Hollywood. And I've worked on over 30 television shows. So I ended up transferring schools because it wasn't, that style of teaching it didn't feel good for my growth. You know, I didn't feel like I was learning anything or getting better. And I don't like using fear as a teaching tactic. But the point is that I was told that I essentially wasn't good. And I still had an incredible dream career after that. You know, I think that I got better. I learned how to get better, and teachers told me how to get better, you know, and they taught me and they mentored me, and I got better. And plus I had all these other qualities that go so far beyond talent.
Were they trying to use like a tough love style of like tearing you down then to build you back up sort of thing? Was it that?
No, it was really, you know, no, because like, I don't think there's really anything wrong with tough love. I mean, I guess delivery could be debated, but tough love is really like telling you things that you need to hear that you might not want to hear, but will help for your growth. And so for me, that program was using fear as a teaching tactic. And so like, and I know that a lot of the other students felt the same way. We were kind of scared to go to class. What is the teacher going to think? What are they going to say? There was so much fear. You know, even with that assignment, I didn't get any notes as to like what could have been better. And so I'm like, oh, I'm almost failing this project, but I don't actually know how to make it better. I just feel bad about myself, and I'm scared because this teacher's, you know, like instilling fear in me essentially in the way that she taught. And she did that throughout the whole semester. So I didn't even, like at the end of the day, feel like I was learning. I was like, I want to be a good graphic designer, but I don't know if I'm learning that here. And it was interesting because almost every student felt the same way, but I was the only one that left. So again, a very teachable moment for myself, you know, but yeah, I don't love, some people like that teaching tactic, to use fear as a teaching tactic. I don't, for me, it's not productive. I feel like I can learn how to do better and be better without being afraid. I feel like it doesn't create or foster a safe environment to take risks and fail. So that was my personal experience.
But then how can we deliver a message to someone without without protecting them too much where they're almost blinded because we're not giving them the real... I don't know. I mean, there's like yes people. Yeah. And a lot of times I'm sure when people reach a certain level, they're surrounded by yes people. And I don't know if that's good or bad. Probably some enable them. Yeah,
yeah, I don't think surrounding yourself with yes men, I don't think is ever good, at least for growth. Yeah, sure. I think that, I mean, feedback, it's totally okay to give feedback. You know, that teacher was more like, you bad. You know, it wasn't like constructive feedback that I felt I could learn from. So, you know, the art school that I transferred to was very tough, very tough. But I never felt bad about myself. I don't know. It was just constructive feedback. It was like, well, this isn't working so well here, but if you do X, Y, and Z, I think it would work better, and here's why. And then I would go, oh, that would make this better. Let me do that. You know, then I'm excited about making changes because I'm learning why it would make it better, which I think is really important. And, you know, as artists, it's important to not attach your self-worth to your work. You know, your work can be a separate thing. Yeah.
What did going to that second art school that you said was very competitive teach you? In terms of competition, I should clarify.
Well, I wouldn't say it was necessarily competitive, although there was a little bit of a sense of competition. They ranked the top 5 portfolios when we graduated, so there was something about like, oh, are you top 5? And I wasn't in the top 5, but I had a professor tell my mom, oh, she would have been in the top 7 if we did 7. She was in our top 7, and it's like, but what does that actually mean? Like, I've lived such a different career. I went off to design graphics for television. Other people are doing other things. So I think what it taught me is that it's good to strive to be your best, but you don't necessarily have to strive to be the best, because I think the best is going to be subjective no matter, where you are, what pool you're in. So, it's good to just strive to be your best, do better than you did last time, see your own growth, and then let that lead to your own path. Even looking, sometimes I would compare myself to where my other peers are now, with their careers. Or, we had a couple students from our school, one she graduated the year before me, I believe, year or two before me, and she became a pretty famous graphic designer. She's very well known. She has a very big following, and the teachers love that and would always point out, talk about her and use her as an example, of course. And then it's like, oh, and I'm always trying to, like, we would joke about her name in class, my peers and I, because it was like, oh, we're never going to live up to that person in our teachers' eyes. And so I guess I learned in that sense about, like stop. I want to tell myself that even now, because even now with my book, I'm like still trying to impress my professors, and I graduated like 13 years ago, and I'm still like, do they think I'm successful? Do they like what I'm doing? And yeah, but I think that lesson I learned there was really like, let yourself be on your own path, and just compare yourself to where you were before, and stop trying to be or do what these other people have.
Is competition good in that it prepares you for the real world? Because in the real world, there's no, oh, you did great, and oh, you get a gold star. It's usually much more brutal than that, and it can be very cold, unfortunately.
Yeah, definitely. I just have a slightly different belief about competition. I believe there's room for everybody. And that might mean something different. It doesn't necessarily mean there's room for everybody in the same exact seat, right? But I do believe that we all deserve to live our dreams in our own way. So it can be competitive in the real world or even in school, but that doesn't mean that you can't live out your dreams. Someone beating you out for a job or an opportunity or something doesn't mean that you can't still live a fulfilling life or achieve your dreams. I mean, there were jobs that I did not get. I've only interviewed like 4 times maybe for a TV show. Most of the jobs I got came from connections that I built over time. The only times that I've interviewed, I've never gotten the job. Never. And that didn't mean that I couldn't still have a really great career. I mean, someone else got that job over me, right? So in that sense, in the competition, I failed there or whatever, someone beat me out. But there was another show for me. There were more opportunities for me, So I really believe, and Chelsea Handler talks about this too. She says like, there's room for everyone.
Can you talk about the other time that someone said you wouldn't be able to do something or succeed?
Yeah, technically, they didn't say the words, but it was implied, and it was something that I'll never forget. In high school, I was very involved in drama and chorus. So I was secretary of the drama club. I was president of the chorus. That was my life. I loved singing. I loved acting. Not the best at dancing, but I would do what was required. But that was my life. I lived theater, and I did pretty well. I was up for the lead several times. I understudied the lead my sophomore year. I was actually up for a lead. It was between me and one other girl my freshman year, which, was a big deal in the politics of high school, that being a freshman up for a lead. And I did well enough to be decent. I wasn't the star of our high school or anything like that. I wasn't in that like top elite group that was like really phenomenal, but I was pretty good. I was good enough to, get a leading role in a musical once and some other big parts and other opportunities. And I loved theater. I really loved acting. I was more enamored with Hollywood than Broadway, but I really loved it. And like I said, I did a summer program at UCLA, and there was a summer theater intensive. So I actually went to UCLA for acting when I was still in high school. And when we started applying for colleges, I didn't apply to any acting programs. And a lot of my friends did. And I started discovering my love for graphic design during that time. And so I was feeling pulled toward graphic design. And so that was really what I was working towards getting into for college. But I was still in the midst, I was still in the midst of theater. And I sat down with the theater teacher one day, and it was just the two of us in a classroom. And I looked at her and I said, the reason why I'm not pursuing acting in college is because I know I'm not good enough. And there was like that little girl inside of me that so badly wanted her to say, you can do it. You're good enough. Like, give it a try. If that's really what you want to do, go for it. And she didn't. And she just sat silent and didn't say anything. And to me, that was confirmation, of her saying, yeah, well, you're not the star of our program, and it's only the stars that really go on. And that was so many years ago, and I remember that moment so clearly still all these years later. It really had an impact on me, and it was one of the reasons, why I didn't pursue acting. And now, I actually believe that everything worked out how it was supposed to. I don't still want to be an actor. Even when I work with my actor clients, I have no desire. I'm not longingly looking at their careers. I was supposed to be a graphic designer. That became my true love. But the lesson that I learned there that I feel like was one of the reasons I wanted to become a coach is because I think there are so many artists that have those moments where they're maybe told they're not good enough, or they think it themselves. And I said in the book that I wish the teacher saw in me, although I really need to take full responsibility and say, I wish I saw it in myself. But I think I wish the teacher saw in me that I had all these other qualities that could potentially lead to success in a career like Hollywood, right? I was already showing leadership skills, right? I was secretary of the drama club. I was president of our 250 person chorus, had, worked my way up there. And so I already had, I was like a self-starter, like I had a positive outlook. I was determined and ambitious. Like I had so many qualities that could help me succeed, even if I wasn't the absolute star, and even if I didn't maybe get into one of the top desired theater programs. Like there's theater programs in countries or in schools all around the country. I don't know. I just think that, I own that for myself now, that I wish I saw it in myself, but I don't think at that moment I understood that so much more than talent was required to succeed. And now looking at like the people who did, pursue theater in college from that program in high school, only one or two of them is actually doing it. So, and I was still able to create, a pretty great career for myself in Hollywood and break in when I didn't know anybody. And I didn't do that because I was this phenomenal designer. I did it because I had all these other qualities that helped me break in.
And we don't know someone's motives behind why they say something too, or don't say something.
Yeah, totally. I mean, and it could have been her own. It doesn't really matter, I think, but, it was just a moment for me that I just want to help people not feel that way, because I feel like if there's a dream in your heart, you can pursue it. Jack Canfield has this quote that I always say, where he says, you wouldn't be given a dream unless you had the capacity to fulfill it. And I really believe that. I really believe that you wouldn't be given a dream unless you had the capacity to fill it. Doesn't mean right in this moment when you're 17 years old that you have all the tools and are able to fulfill it now, right? But it creates potential. Like it says that the potential is 100% there.
Is it better to try to avoid making money as an artist? Like, should someone not set out to do their art and also try to make money at it right away?
I believe that both can happen. And so I go into it believing this dream will provide for me. Because I have this desire, of course it's going to financially support me as well. You know, it might take time to get to where you want to be, but I have this whole chapter. I know I keep dropping my book and like name dropping my book, but I do have this whole chapter about, you know, this idea of being a starving artist, because I think that those two words, you rarely hear them without each other. And I believe that you don't have to be a starving artist. And I also believe that there's nothing wrong with desiring financial success or with, you know, with wanting to make money from your art. So to me, it's about, I believe that I can create art that is going to financially support me, and really having that belief from the beginning.
Most artists don't make money, especially right up front. Wouldn't it be easier to accept that?
Most artists. Accepting that belief equals determining your fate. Right? So your fate is 100% dependent upon your belief. So if you believe that most artists don't make money in the beginning, that 100% will be your fate. And what you do when you accept that belief, when you take that belief on, you are now putting yourself into the most people pool. Sure, most people don't make a ton of money in the beginning. Do you have to be most people? Right? And so can you find an example? Like, I always love to talk about the example of Gilmore Girls. It's one of my favorite shows, but Alexis Bledel had no acting credits on her resume before booking that title lead role. So, you know, I mean, she was modeling before. She had a modeling career there, but you know, breaking into Hollywood as an actress. And then, you know, I don't know what the going rates were back then, but series regulars now start at like $25,000, $30,000 an episode, depending on the network, right? And so she technically went from zero to several $1,000s per week per episode. And back then they were doing 22, 24 episode seasons. So there's always going to be an exception to the rule. And I think it's better to focus on the exception than to focus on the rule. I think it's better to go into it with, well, I could be that exception. Because when you accept the rule and you say, oh, I'm going to be like most people, then that's exactly what your experience will be.
Is there a danger in not thinking that you're part of that pool?
Are you saying, like, is there a danger to think of yourself in this smaller high achievers pool?
Yeah.
No.
Okay.
I mean, what danger? I think that it's like, I guess the danger could be like, oh, but then you're like putting yourself in this pool where people make it, and what if you don't? I think that there's no danger in believing that your dreams are possible. And this is like the high achiever, right? Like in a really big way, in a more committed way than most people. I don't think there's any danger in that. And I think that like well, what if it doesn't happen? I again believe my success is inevitable. So to me, there's no specific time frame that it has to happen in. I just know it's going to happen. I don't know when, I don't know how, I don't know where, but it's going to happen. And I have that belief throughout. So there's no, well, if it doesn't happen by X, that means you're in the most people pool. You know, I just don't think that way.
Do you think other people paying you to do your art inherently makes it worse because you don't have the same level of freedom to create the art that's in your heart?
What if I believed that the work that is in my heart is what people will ask for? Right? So I think it's changing the belief, right? It's changing the belief about it. Like, oh, I'm gonna have to do something that's not really in my heart, that I don't really want to do because the client's asking me or whatever, right? Sure, that happens, and that has happened on my path. You know, like I had graphic design day jobs that I did not enjoy, but they financially supported me so I could stay in LA and keep doing this. So, you know, I've had that experience, but I think in the bigger picture, if I'm doing work that doesn't feel good, I stop doing it, or I don't like there was, you know, I'll be honest, I didn't love working on cop shows because from a graphic standpoint, it's really boring. You know, it's like you're designing signs for hospitals and prisons. like that's like basically the only graphics I do, and they're rectangles with text, and that's it. It's not a very creative, genre in terms of graphics. And so I did a cop show. I did not enjoy it. And then I was like, okay, I'm not going to do this again. And then I would turn down cop shows in the future, right? So for me, it's more about like, what if I just believe that the work I want to do is what will be asked of me?
Can you give us an example of that happening? Was there an example where you saw a show that you wanted to do and you said, that's the kind of art I want to do, that's the color scheme, I like that. How do I make that my reality?
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't that specific in terms of like color schemes or certain art. It was more just like, I would love to do something that's more creative, where maybe every week the graphics are different, where I get to explore more with like different signage or different props or, things that are integral to the story that are just inherently more interesting. And, and shortly after that, I did book a TV show called Chasing Life, which was the ABC Family show that I said I loved, which was a great experience. And I got to do really cool, fun, different graphics. I feel like my portfolio really expanded from that show because we got to do so many different things. Like we did a marathon once, and I got to do these like marathon banner graphics, but then also, the runners' tags that they had to wear. And then I got to do wardrobe, like there was a camp and I got to design the sweatshirts that the counselors wore. Like there was really just variety. And that was fun for me, more so than, the cop graphics kind of stuff where you're just designing rectangles with text. So and then that became really fun. And I said, okay, so this is going to be my new standard. I want to work on a show that feels fun and creative. And those are the only things I would say yes to now.
Unless it was Blade Runner, then that would be cool.
No, like I turned down Sons of Anarchy.
Oh, you did?
Yeah,
Oh, wow.
No. I don't care how big the show is. If it's something I know that I don't think I will enjoy, I won't do it. My happiness is now more important. So
the colored leathers on the back of the motorcycle jackets that just didn't interest
yeah, like okay, that'd be cool. But my point was that like there,
right, it wasn't something
even if it's something, even if a project is like big and well known, if I don't think that I will enjoy doing it, then I will still turn it down.
Sure, that makes sense.
And I just want to add something there, because some people might be going, oh, well, you have the luxury of turning it down because you're at a certain point in your career now where you can say no and things are going to come in. But I just want to add on to that is that when I turn down something that doesn't feel like a good fit for me, I am making room for something better to come in, right? So as long as you say yes to things you don't want to do, you now don't even have room for something new to come in. So, it's not even necessarily about I'm at a certain place in my career where now I can say no to things. To me, it's really about what do I want to make room for in my life? Even if, the great example is I talk about all the time, people that stay non-union, especially actors, when they're afraid to join SAG, because once they join SAG, they can no longer do non-union work. And that is scary to them because they only know non-union work and they feel that non-union is easier to book than SAG work, right? And so they like to stay non-union. And I say, when you are staying non-union as long as you can, you are staying where you are as long as you can. Even though it might take a little longer for the SAG stuff to start flowing in, and it might be a little scarier, that doesn't mean that it won't flow in. And as long as you're choosing the other thing, it'll never flow in, right? So it doesn't really matter how far you are in your career to be able to turn things down or to be able to start making room for what it is you truly desire. It might take some time to bring it in, but you want to at least open yourself up and make room for the things that you really want.
That's a good example right there. Yeah, I know a lot of people, they don't want to pay the dues and they keep
Right.
the eligibility status, but
Right.
then they just keep working. Yeah, good example. What do you teach your clients about money?
Oh man, what don't I teach them about? No. Money is such an important topic, I think, and really anyone's journey, not even specific to Hollywood. I am still in my own learning journey, of wealth consciousness and working on my money mindset. But what I like to teach them is really focus on what is possible and what sounds exciting instead of focusing on what doesn't feel good. So for example, this example comes up a lot because I remember my clients telling me about this other teacher teaching about this. When you are focusing on, if you're a writer, director, actor, and you're focusing on, this is how much of my paycheck goes to taxes, and this is how much of my paycheck goes to my agent or manager, and I am left with so little. When you are focusing on, I am left with so little, you are going to create more of that in your life, in your career, right? Whatever we focus on expands. So instead of going, oh my gosh, if I book a co-star and I only make $800 for the day, and then, or I guess I start with 1,000, it's easier math to do in my head. I only make $1,000 for the day, and 30% of that is going to taxes, 20% is going to my agent and manager, and I'm only going home with like $500. That really sucks. To me, that is the most people thinking, right? So in terms of money, instead of focusing on how much it sucks when you're left with little money at the end of the day, instead, what if you focused on, what if I booked a recurring role for $20,000? And then even though some of it's going to taxes and my agent and manager, I'm still left with a pretty nice chunk of change, right? So instead of focusing on limitations and what, feels like your fate is going to be, and really focus on, the downside of all of that, focus on what's possible. Focus on being the one that gets $10 million paychecks from a movie. Again, it's like the most people pool and the high achiever pool. That high achiever pool, people who are making $10 million a movie, might be smaller than most people in the industry. But let's focus on that, because that's how you get there. So it's so important to really think from an abundant mindset about what is possible.
How do you teach people to stretch that? I guess it's a muscle.
Again, kind of like what I was telling you with, My Success is Inevitable, in addition to suggesting lots of books and resources that I love, that I think are really helpful, because I think that money mindset is a deep conversation that needs to happen over time. We need to unlearn a lot of things and relearn new things and take a look at our own money patterns. But just like with My Success is Inevitable, it's like, let's start looking for proof. Okay, I had a client that booked a $17,000 job, right? So there's proof that somebody I worked with, in the recent, past or whatever, booked a bigger paycheck, was able to receive a bigger paycheck. So now your subconscious goes, oh, so it's possible. Oh, so it's possible for me to get that, right? So again, it's like feeding your subconscious mind proof of what's possible, because proof exists. We just choose not to focus on it. We choose to focus on the people that are coming home with $500 and feeling broke. But instead, all this other evidence also exists. We're just saying that it's so rare and that that's not possible for us, or it's like winning the lottery, right? And so it's really about looking for that proof and going, okay, that is what I want to focus on. And that is what I'm working towards.
The Gilmore Girls example that you gave, again, she had been modeling, but she'd never had a speaking role?
No.
Wow. And how long was, that show is, didn't
like
they do a second?
7 seasons, okay. And then they recently did the, Netflix special that was 4 episodes long.
Right.
Yeah. But there's great, I love the show, so I've watched interviews and things like that behind the scenes, and I read Lauren Graham's, one of her books. And Lauren Graham talks about how she played Alexis Bledell's mother. As the two of them, for people that don't know Gilmore Girls. Lauren Graham talks about, she's like, if you ever see a scene where I'm like grabbing Alexis's arm and pulling her close to me, she's like, I was pulling her on her mark. Because she was so new that she didn't, in the beginning, she didn't necessarily know all those things, like, oh, you need to stand on your mark, and, things that a seasoned actor would know. And so even without all that, that's how new she was. Even without all that knowledge and all that experience, she still booked the title, one of the title roles, series regular, like 7 seasons.
Wow.
See, and that's possible. When we focus on that instead of, the actor who books 1 co-star a year and really struggles, right? It's like both evidence exist. Which one do we want to focus on?
How does money change an artist?
I don't think money changes anybody. I think, again, it's all internal. So whatever it looks like money changed was already there inside, right? So sometimes they say, fame is like holding up a magnifying glass to what's already there. Like, for example, I worked on a show, I won't mention names, but I worked on a show where one of the lead actresses was not a very nice person. And I found out that people who knew her before she was famous said that she was like that then. She wasn't a nice person then. It's like holding up a magnifying glass. So I don't think that money, I don't think any external thing changes us. I think that only, events and things like that, I guess, can shift our perception or our feelings or our beliefs. But I don't think like a tangible thing like money, which is just like a value exchange, I don't think that necessarily changes people. I think, again, it's like a magnifying glass to what's already there. So a lot of times people will feel when I have X amount of money, all my money problems will go away. But having more money doesn't change your spending habits. It doesn't change your saving habits or what you do with your money, how you treat your money. You are the person that does that. It might inspire you to change your habits. It might inspire you to do things differently. But I don't think money actually changes people.
From the people you've worked with, how does their outward success change the people around them?
Good question. Because I love that. Like, to me, that it makes me so happy to help, I say, spread the light. Like, I want to spread the light in Hollywood. The people that I work with, helping them feel good and feel inspired again will then help people around them feel inspired. So, I think it's more about the internal changes than the external things that they book, the projects that they book. I think that, one of my clients was saying that her mom said, "Oh, you're so upbeat recently. You're so positive and happy." And she was like, "Yes, I'm a month working with Erica." So I think that it's more the internal shift that impacts people around them in a positive way. But, I guess the projects that they might book or the external things can kind of, I guess, with the internal shifts also help impact people. But, what I'm seeing and what I really hope is that it impacts people for the better, where it inspires other people to go after their dreams. And it shows other people what's possible. When I first started out almost 13 years ago, I read Jack Canfield's Success Principles. It was my very first self-help book I ever read. And I was like, this is the greatest thing ever. I loved it so much. And I think it really helped me break in to Hollywood so quickly. And one of the tactics that he talked about was writing your goals on an index card. And so I would do that for every goal for years. I don't do it anymore because my belief around that has shifted a little bit. But like, my dad started writing his goals down on index cards. I was like, that is so cool. I think, there's something so incredible about inspiring others to go after their dreams or to believe in more, believe in more possibility for themselves by seeing people they know or love do it.
But what if that doesn't happen?
What if it doesn't inspire others?
What if it takes another turn?
What do you mean?
What if somehow they can't handle that? Have you seen that in...
Like the person who's succeeding or the person that's watching them?
The person that's succeeding, what if some of the individuals around them, that threatens them? Have you worked with your clients on that? And how do they internalize that?
So they're feeling threatened by their success?
Or the dynamics changed, power structures changed. Mm-hmm. And so it upsets the apple cart.
Yeah, that absolutely does happen. And I've coached many clients through that, I think especially with friends. And I think that, you can't control somebody else's journey, right? So like my client can't control their friend getting on board and being excited and being inspired or feeling threatened or feeling, not good about it or whatever, right? We can't control somebody else's journey. They're on their own path. And so it's not up to us how they feel. And one of the things that I work with my clients a lot is because a lot of times when we're doing the mindset, it's really the internal shifts that impact their relationships the most. And a lot of times I say that when you start changing and growing, what you used to tolerate becomes less tolerable. So the people that maybe aren't getting on board, maybe were never meant to get on board with them, right? And maybe it was something they were tolerating before, but it's like they can't even tolerate it anymore. They don't even want to be around them, right? So I think that, it's important that we surround ourselves with people who support us and who want us to win and are, and excited for us. And if people are feeling, negative Nancy's, they're feeling down, that's okay. They're on their own path. But the more we surround ourselves with people like that, the more time we spend with them, the more it can start to drag us down if we're not incredibly strong about our own energy and thought process. So I never think it's about like, oh, you need to break up with this friend. I don't think it's necessarily about cutting people out of your life, but just being more present and aware of the kinds of conversations you have with them and the things that they say, and then how it impacts how you feel.
When you've had a client reach tremendous success, what were some of the surprises that they weren't ready to handle?
Well, I've worked with a lot of new people, so tremendous success. I don't know if that's all relative, and I don't know if I've ever coached somebody that achieved something so incredible that they weren't ready for, because I think that the work that we do gets them ready for it. And that's always what it's about. Like it's always the internal thing, how do you feel about what is happening? And do you have support around you? That's like why some of my clients end up staying into, like I have a membership where it's just a couple coaching calls a month in a group setting so that they can keep up with the work, to keep up with that belief system, keep up with that mindset work, so that as they do achieve things, they have the support system to help them, handle anything that comes their way.
So some of this has never come as a surprise to them. They've taken these steps and they were ready emotionally.
Yeah, nothing's ever a surprise. I mean, because I train them to expect success. And I shouldn't even say I train them. I don't want to take responsibility. They shift their belief system to believe that their success is coming. So it's never a surprise. It's exciting and they're really happy about it. And, it's funny, like even small things. One of my clients texted me the other day in her session. She moved home during the pandemic and is going to move back to LA soon. And she was like, when do I move? Like, I'm looking at places. I don't know when the timing is right. And I said, well, when you find a place that you love that feels really good. And I was like, watch, I bet this week you'll find a place now that we had this conversation. And she texted me the next day and was like, you won't believe one of those apartments just became available that I was interested in. So it's never a surprise. It's expected. I mean, it's surprise in the way of like, wow, this really did come true. This really did happen. And there's excitement around that, but never a surprise.
So expect success. Okay, I like that. And do you think with the every people pool, it's not expected?
Correct.
I'm hoping.
Yeah, correct.
I'm fingers crossed. Okay.
Ask anyone. Ask most people. Ask them what they believe about their success or about the next booking or the next job or whatever. And yeah, most people do not expect it. They expect failure, or they expect it to take a long time, or they expect struggle.
Erica, would you mind reading a page or two from your book?
Well, I just so happen to have it on my lap right here.
Okay. Oh, it's beautiful.
I would be happy to. I'm like a teacher. This is chapter 16. It's called Own Your Power. Okay. Your dream comes from the most powerful place, you. It's born from divine inspiration, one of the most powerful forces in the universe. This calling becomes a burning desire, one that gives you ambition, perseverance, drive, and even compassion in a way you've never felt before. It helps form the most powerful version of you there ever was. And yet, the moment it becomes an impossible feat you have to achieve, the power is immediately stripped away. It's your superpower and kryptonite all in one. But the stripping of your power is really an illusion. It's a choice to give it away, and a choice you don't have to make. Instead of feeling at the mercy of others to make your dream come true, you can take your power back by realizing, as Abraham Hicks says, they are all just pawns in the law of attraction game. You get to control so much more than you think. You get to control your energy, your vibration, your beliefs, your strategy, your actions, your risks and asks, and the most important of them all, you get to create your reality. All of those things combined with the belief in abundance and limitless opportunities leads to a world where it doesn't matter if someone says yes or no to you. The dream is happening no matter what. I think one of my superpowers is reminding people how powerful they really are. That shift in energy can be all it takes to manifest exciting new opportunities. Because how you show up to the world is how the world will show up for you. Whatever you believe will be reflected back to you. If you feel powerless in your dream pursuit, you will have experiences that confirm those feelings, and vice versa. P.S. Owning your power is so much more fun, so let's choose that, shall we? Let me help you by busting the power myths that your subconscious is fighting for. Here is one of the power myths. Gatekeepers. Gatekeepers are like the bouncers of the club deciding who gets in. It feels like they have all the power, and artists are at the mercy of their decision. Actors are at the mercy of casting directors. Authors are at the mercy of publishers. Startups are at the mercy of investors. It feels like these gatekeepers are in charge of our fate, and we have no control over what they say. Access to our dreams is in their hands. So how are we supposed to feel powerful in those moments? We hold none of the power in those decisions. Clap. That's me waking you up from the hypnotic spell you're under. Time for the powerful truth. Powerful truth. These gatekeepers do not determine your fate. Only you can do that. Pillar number 7 says that your success is inevitable, which means your fate has already been decided. Any single gatekeeper or any single opportunity will not break your chances of succeeding. It's already been decided. Your success is a done deal. Who cares what the gatekeeper says? Your person is coming. Your opportunity is coming because it's inevitable. And if that's the case, what if these gatekeepers were, in fact, allies? What if they were friends? What if they were your support system, your cheer squad? What if the universe always placed people on your path to help you? And what if that help didn't always come in the pretty package you want? A no could be just as much a gift as a yes. When Jack Canfield's book was turned down 144 times by publishers, what if that was all a gift because the publisher he was meant to work with happened to be the 145th? What if it's all working out perfectly? We tend to put gatekeepers on pedestals because we think they hold the power. But you hold the power. Take them down from that pedestal. They are just people. They are pawns in your game. And this game is in the highest good of everyone. You know the value you bring. You know you were meant to do this, so it can't not work out. If this gatekeeper doesn't let you in, it says nothing about your potential. It says nothing about your future or your ability to succeed. It just wasn't a match. But I promise you, your people are out there. Keep going because they're looking for you too.
Excellent.
That's just 2 pages.
Why did you choose that passage?
Well, one, because I think that it's something a lot of people struggle with. I think that so many filmmakers feel powerless in this industry, and they are constantly searching for ways to feel powerful. That's why a lot of people do their own work, film their own projects, because they want to feel in control and they feel like everything's out of control. So I wanted to read that to address that, exact thing. I think that there's so many ways that we can feel, be in our own power without it even having to be something as literal as filming your own content. And also because so many people have read the beginning of the book, the first chapter, and I think a lot of what we talked about today was stories from the first couple chapters. And so I wanted to share something from the back of the book, the third section, that to me feels like this is how a high achiever thinks. A high achiever doesn't feel at the mercy of gatekeepers. They feel that they have the power to create whatever they want. And if something doesn't work out or doesn't happen the way they wanted it to, that's okay. It doesn't mean that it's not still going to happen.
And how did you feel writing that chapter? Were you sort of empowered? I mean, as you're writing it, were you almost transformed into another world?
Yeah, or? I mean, everything I wrote, I need to hear over and over again. I read my own book a lot, and I'm not trying to say that in like a super arrogant way, but in a way of like, I needed to hear this again today, I really feel like so much of the book came from working with my clients and the work that we've done over several years now. But I do feel like I sort of, I don't want to say channeled, but I just feel like it came from a place, like I felt like this idea to write this book was divinely sent to me. Like I just got the idea. It wasn't something I didn't strategize and say, "Ooh, I should write a book." I was like, I just felt this feeling of like, you have to get this message out to help people, And then when COVID hit, not to be super morbid, I was like, I have to get this message out before I die. What if I get COVID and die? Like I was really feeling like I need to finish this book. I told my mom where like my book files were on my computer. I was just a little fearful during, during this pandemic. But yeah, I don't know. I really want more people to hear this message, and hopefully it will help transform, their careers.
When you tell your clients this message, are they resistant at first?
Oh, yeah. I mean, yes and no, and myself as well. I share this story with my clients a lot when I was first starting out, really embracing some of this for myself. I was working with a life coach, and we were talking about money, abundance in terms of money. And I was really struggling financially that month. And I said, I'm so broke. I really need a haircut. I can't afford a haircut. I can't afford anything. And she said, Erica, you are an abundant person. You are so abundant. You have access to money all around you. And I said, do you want to look at my bank account? I have hardly any money in it. And I went back and forth with her arguing about how broke I was. No, you don't understand. You need to hear me. I am broke. I am struggling. I need to be heard. And my poor coach, she was so patient and kind with me, because I had so much resistance. And now, of course, looking back, I share that story because when I look back now, I can see like I was really fighting for my limitations. I was fighting to stay where I was. I wasn't listening to her when she was, it's like if I listened to her, like I could have been open to solutions with the FedEx logo, right? There could have been solutions in front of me that I didn't see because I didn't want to see them. I wanted to instead prove how broke I was. So I myself have been resistant, and I've definitely had clients be resistant, especially in terms of not really necessarily the belief, but the action that it should then lead to. So for example, like one time I worked with a client who I was like, you need to change your day job, because her day job had her traveling a lot. And she would travel for like at least 1 week every month. So she was out of town a lot. And I was like, you want to audition, and this was pre-pandemic, nothing was self-tape. You want to audition and get representation and audition and book work. You're not even here to do it. This day job, I understand that it's supporting you, but you need a different day job that's going to support what you're actually trying to do, because right now it's blocking you. And it took her, I think, like 6 weeks. I mean, it took her weeks, because that's a scary thing, that's definitely a risk. But, working through the mindset of it, of like believing that your success is inevitable. If you take this risk, you start to believe, of course there's another day job out there for me. Of course I can believe that that's possible, that I can be financially supported in a day job that also gives me time to audition, and stay in LA at least and not be traveling, right? It's like you have to start to believe that things can work out for you, even with these little things of, I have to believe not only that my success is inevitable, but that I can find a different day job. I have to believe that I can be financially supported. So we worked through, shifting her beliefs, and eventually she came around, changed her day job, got an agent right away, booked her first co-star, booked a lead in a TV movie, so things really shifted for her. But, it's okay to have resistance. It's okay that it takes time. I think as long as you're open to doing the work, it doesn't have to happen overnight. But if you're open to doing that work, I think then that's where the benefit will be.
When you had the down period after you had moved out here, got this great job, and then the recession hit, or it was already in motion, and I believe then the show was canceled, I guess. Were you fighting for your limitations during that time?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yes. Yes, I really was. And again, it goes back to, I had those like blinders on of only seeing the problem and not allowing myself to open up to solutions. I didn't do nothing. Like, I'm an ambitious person, and I tried. I put myself out there. I think I cold emailed a bunch of people. I tried to get another job. So it's not like I didn't do anything, but I had those blinders on, and I was definitely like, it's like, if my mom suggested like, oh, you could go for a drive or go down to the ocean. No, Mom, I can't do that. That means I have to put gas in the car, and I can't afford gas, so it was like I was constantly focused on the problem, and fighting to stay there, essentially. My mom was like trying to tell me all these things that could potentially help me. And it took me a long time to get to a place where I stopped fighting for my limitations, and I finally opened myself up to help.
At what point in your career did you go without work for, was it a year? Okay. What happened?
Yeah, that was in 2009. And that contact, that one connection that I had made helped me get that first show. But I didn't have like a huge Rolodex of people that I knew in the industry. So it was really challenging to book another job because, as from a graphic designer standpoint, you really need to know people. Once you get into the union, there is an availability list that you can put yourself on, and you can get some jobs from your name being on the availability list. But people are only going to that list until they've exhausted their list of people they know. So it's so much about who you know, and I just didn't know enough people yet. My pool was so small. So I had, it was like the worst year of my life because it was also the recession. And so I couldn't even get a waitressing job. Like, I remember this one day where I saw Craigslist posting for a waitress interview, a server interview. And I got in my car right away and drove right over, and there were already like 10 people in line, and they were only taking one person. So that was really challenging too. And like, I really, even now, I try to get better, but I tend to tie my self-worth to how much money I have. And so when I like couldn't even make a living as like getting a server job or something like that, or any kind of side job, and this was also before Uber and Lyft existed. I couldn't drive for Instacart. I couldn't do those things. I couldn't be a Postmates person. And so that was really hard for me too. So not only like struggling to find the work, but then tying my worth to that and feeling so unworthy of success or anything that I wanted. That was really hard.
How well do you remember the depression that you faced?
Oh gosh. I'm very well, because I still experience it all the time. Like I think I'm prone to depression. I call it situational depression because it usually comes from a situation. So something happens to cause me to be depressed. I don't normally feel it just to feel it with no trigger. So I recall it very well because I felt it again many times since then. But it was just a really pivotal time in my life. Like I remember it so well. So well. I can really connect, to those feelings and, what I tried to do, just all of the things that I did. And even though it was almost 13 years ago at this point, 12 years ago, I still remember it very clearly.
Yeah, it was a really rough time for a lot of people.
Yes, it was. And I mean, thank God I didn't have kids or didn't have a home. So many people lost their homes and, much worse than, fortunately I was able to stay afloat. And I had 2 roommates at the time. And so I was able to still stay in LA, which is amazing. It could have been much worse, but yeah, it was a tough time.
How were you able to book a job at the end of all that?
I asked for help. It was so hard. My cousin told me a story. It's a short story. I can tell it quickly. And people probably heard it before. I forget all the details, but essentially there was a man in his house and it started raining. And as the rain came down, it didn't stop and it started to flood. And he was like, oh my gosh, how am I going to be okay? And he just kept praying to God, God, save me. I will be okay. Please help me, God. And the flood kept growing and the rain was getting worse. And so he goes to the upstairs in his house so he can get to the next level because it's starting to come into his house. And he sees someone in their truck drives by. And they're like, hey, man, we can help you. Come jump in the truck. And he was like, no, God will save me. I'm going to go upstairs to this upper level. I will be fine. And then the rain keeps coming and the flood is rising. And someone in a boat passes by. And they're like, hey, jump in the boat. We'll help you. We'll save you. They see him in this window, jump out of your window. And he's like, no, I'll be okay. I'm praying God will save me. And then finally it becomes like unbearable and he has to literally climb to the roof of his house. And a helicopter comes and flies over and drops a ladder and says, we grab the ladder, we can save you. I said, no, God will save me. I prayed and I know God will save me. And the water rose so much that he couldn't go anywhere and he ended up drowning and died. And he goes to heaven and he's like, God, what the heck? I prayed for you to save me. Why didn't you save me? And God said, I sent you a truck. I sent you a boat. I sent you a helicopter. And when my cousin told me that story, it really helped me see that, like, if you're drowning, it's okay to ask for help. I felt very ashamed of where I was, in my life and how much I was struggling. Because again, I really tied it to my self-worth and I just thought, I'm not a good enough human being. I don't deserve this. And so I don't even deserve somebody's help, And I would ghost people's texts. I just wouldn't even respond to friends' texts or calls because I was so ashamed. I was so embarrassed. If they say, how are you? What's going on? And I would say, nothing. 9 months later and still nothing is going on. I was so ashamed. So after my cousin told me that story, I was like, okay. And so I reached out to one of the girls that I had become friendly with from the first show. And I told her, look, I really need a job if you know of anyone looking, because she was the same age as me, but she had already been in the industry longer and she knew a lot of people. And so she had found other work. I said, I really need a job. If you hear of anything, could you let me know? And she heard of something and she recommended me, and it was Glee. And they called me, and they called me a week after I finally got a waitressing job. A week after. And I was like, you have no idea how much I want to come work for you. But it was to fill in for somebody for just a couple days. And I was like, you have no idea how badly I want to say yes to you. but I just spent like 8 or 9 months with no job, and I just got this waitressing job a week ago. I don't think I can quit this for just a couple days work, even though I really want to. And so I said, like, if something else comes up longer term, please, please call me. And a month later they did. And they called me and they said, now we need someone to fill in for the rest of the season. And I gave my notice after a month of waitressing, and I went and worked on Glee.
Because that goes back to that energy shift. And so here you had something, you finally got a waitressing job after, racing down to an open call for one. And then this other one opened up. So that goes back to what you're talking about earlier.
Definitely. I mean, even just getting the waitressing job, it filled me up so much, and not even just self-worth and feeling like, wow, okay, I finally have some money coming in, I can survive and I have a job. But also being around other people, because I was so afraid to spend money that I wouldn't leave my room. I would stay in my room, in my apartment, like all day, every day. I was afraid to leave because it would cost me money to leave. And I wasn't around people. And so that, I think, also helped to be around people. And, waitressing, you're hustling and walking fast and stuff. So it was getting exercise again and moving my body, all of these things that were beneficial that I think really shifted my energy then to be open for a TV show.
Very interesting. Wow, what a story. So when you got the waitressing job, how did that feel? Because I realized that wasn't your ultimate destination.
No, it wasn't, but I was elated. I just needed something. I hadn't had any work in so long. I was so happy and so grateful to get that waitressing job. Yes.
Oh. Do you ever go back to that restaurant? Well, now you probably can't because it's just takeout if it's still around.
Right. Well, so it's funny because it's on the block near where I live, so I could walk there. And I felt so guilty about like leaving after just a month, and I could tell the manager was not happy with me. That on Glee, I was an assistant and I was in charge of getting lunch every day. So I would always say, hey, we should go to this restaurant. And so I gave them business and we would order from the whole office and order lunch there. And I would go there and pick it up because I wanted to still give them business, because I felt so bad about leaving. And that restaurant was amazing food, so good, but it doesn't exist anymore. And another restaurant is in its place now. That's also a very good restaurant. And I go there when it's open. Yes.
That's a great story.
And even the staff, like the people in the kitchen and the other servers, like some of them I still talk to this day. Some of them went to the restaurant next door and I always say hi. I get so excited to see them and it's nice.
Do you believe in visualization?
Yes.
How does it work?
Well, it works however you want it to work, but I think that, so I'm really fascinated by the science behind it. I just think it's so fascinating. And so Dr. Joe Dispenza teaches a lot of the science behind it. I'm so fascinated. So he gave this really good example of an experiment that they did. I don't know if he conducted or someone else did a long time ago, where they monitored the brain of somebody practicing the piano. And it was for a certain amount of hours, a couple days a week or something. And they literally would get brain scans or, I don't know the scientific term, but they studied their brain to see what happens, like what part of the brain lights up, what happens in your brain when you're rehearsing playing the piano. And then they did the same thing, but asked him to just rehearse it in his mind. Just visualize yourself rehearsing for the same amount of time. So if it was 3 hours, spend 3 hours rehearsing playing the piano, not actually touching a piano. And what they found was the exact same part of the brain lit up. And what this was really showing them is that your brain doesn't really know the difference between something imagined or visualized and something real that's right in front of you. And they talk about when you visualize what you want happening and you close your eyes and you really see it in detail and you play it out like a movie in your mind, you're actually impacting the quantum field. I mean, this is like quantum physics and it's getting a little sciencey, but you're actually like impacting the quantum field around you and it creates possibility. Like now that you envision it, it exists in real life somewhere. And he does a much better job explaining because I'm an art brain, not a science brain. And so I kind of summarized the science that he shared, but the way that I remember it. But he said that, for example, in the morning when you wake up, if you have a thought, I have to go to the bathroom right when you wake up. And then your body goes to the bathroom. So your body physically follows the thought. So when you visualize, play out this movie in your mind of you booking a project or, getting anything that you want, your body then will follow the thought and it will lead you to actions and things to do and, connections, people to talk to, whatever, to follow that thought because your brain thinks it's real, doesn't know the difference. And Dr. Joe talks about, and I don't really do this enough. I'm a very visual person, so it's super easy for me to visualize, and I can kind of do it without even having to go into a deep meditation. Like I can connect to it so easily because I'm such a visual person. But Dr. Joe talks about like for this to work really well, it's best if you can do this in a meditative state. So if you can just close your eyes and visualize whatever it is that you want to visualize. Let's say, like I do this great meditation visualization with my clients where like I might walk them through a day of them going to set, booking, on a project that they love. They get up and they get in their car and we play out the whole day. You drive to Paramount Studios, you get to your trailer, you sit in the hair and makeup, literally all the details of it and like what's around you. And Dr. Joe talks about like incorporating your 5 senses. Sense of like, how does it smell? What are you touching? So to really, make it come to life in your mind. And so he says that if you can get to a place in your meditative state, and every time I talk about this, I'm like, Erica, you need to do this more because this is so great. If you can get to a place in your meditative state where you're visualizing and you forget about, you're no longer connected to time, your body, or your environment. Meaning you're just so into this visualization that you have no idea if 5 minutes passed or 30 minutes passed, right? So you're not like super aware of time. You are not fidgeting, or touching your body. So like you're just so into it that you're not even aware of your body or itchy or, whatever we do when we're wiggling in a meditation. And then your environment, like you're not thinking about the room that you're sitting in. When you can get to a place where you're no longer aware of those 3 things, that's like the magic space where the visualization comes to life and really kind of creates in this quantum field. So I think visualization is just such an amazing tool for us to use. Like one, it just gets you excited. I think it's just good to help get you in the energy, which I can even do just talking about the specifics of my dream. I get excited. If anyone asks me about like the house I want to buy, I will go on forever and I get so excited and I can tell you all the details. That's like brings me that energy of the visualization. But so I think it's good for that sense and like it gets you excited and it gets you connected to the possibility, which then will lead to ideas or actions or bigger risks, any of the thing that good energy will lead to. And then also from a scientific perspective, you're essentially creating this possibility in the quantum field. And now you're expecting it to happen. And so you're doing all the things you would do if you knew it was coming.
Do you have any examples of how this creative visualization has helped some of your clients?
So one of the things that I have my clients do in addition to visualizing is to write it out. And so I have what they do, we call it a clear intentions list. And so they write like a list of what their intentions are, what they want to create. And so, this happens all the time. They get the agent or manager that matches everything on their list. They create things all the time. And one of my clients actually the other day had posted in the Facebook group that she recently got a new agent that feels really great. It's a great relationship. They're bringing her high quality auditions. They understand each other. It seems like they really support her dream. Like all these dreamy things that people want from a rep that they often don't get. And she said, because I told her, I'm like, man, I wish we could go back to your 2-year ago self and tell that version of you, like that you got this great rep and you're having this wonderful experience. And she's like, I know. She said, like, I remember one of your other clients having it happen to her a year ago and feeling like so excited for her and seeing that it was possible and really wanting that for myself. And then it happened for her. So it's not necessarily that they're going through the whole like meditation and visualization, although I think a lot of my clients are doing that naturally. But really visualizing in any kind of sense, even outside of meditation, what it is they want and then having it happen.
Do you ever see people who are unable to make positive changes in their life?
Yeah, yeah, I do. I think, no judgment. Again, I think everyone's on their own path. And actually, this is something that I had to work on as a coach, to not take that on for myself and beat myself up about it. Like I didn't do a good enough job. I couldn't change them. My work couldn't help them change. I've struggled with that in the past, and really had to learn, like, I give them the tools, but it's up to them what they do with it. I can't make anybody do anything. So, I've definitely seen that happen, but I do think that everyone's on their own path. And I think that people come around when they come around, and when they need to, when it's right for them. Tony Robbins talks about how everyone moves towards pain or pleasure. So a lot of times he says, people don't change until the pain becomes too great. And that's been my experience 100% as well. It's like I remember when I was working on a show full time and starting my coaching business, and I really got to the point where I needed to leave the show in order for my business to take off, if that's what I wanted. Like there was only so much I could do with my business working on a TV show full time, especially TV hours, working 8-10-hour day or 10-12-hour days. I knew I had to leave the job, but it took me a while to make that, to actually make that leap. As ambitious and driven as I am, I have my own moments of resistance, and it took me time, and it wasn't until the pain became too great where I said, what am I doing? I can't stay here. Like I have to get out. Something happened at work. It wasn't even a big thing, but it was just something that gave me reason to leave. And it wasn't until the pain became too great that I actually made the change. And so Tony says that we're moving towards pain or towards pleasure, where like there's something you want. And so you make a decision based on that because you really want it. So I think that, when people, aren't making positive changes in their life, maybe the pain just hasn't become too great yet, and maybe that moment will happen for them in the future.
What goes through your mind when someone tells you you can't do something?
I will say that there's still a little teeny part of me that that answers first in my mind and says, oh yeah, they're right. Like even with all the work I do, there's still like this teeny tiny part, but I quiet it very quickly. And I just don't accept that for myself. And because there's always going to be proof that that's not true for everybody or everything. That's why I say to look for absolutes when they're saying words like always or never, that'll never work, or you can't do that, but there's always going to be an exception to that. Right? So I can't take that on as my own. And even if no proof existed and it was something new that I was trying to do, I still have to believe that it's possible. I still have to get behind that, regardless. So usually if somebody tells me that, they're either someone that I'm not going to work with moving forward, or I might try to educate them on my philosophy, how I view things. But, in the industry, I still do hear it a lot. Yeah.
Can you talk about limiting beliefs and how we live someone else's reality?
This is where I want to talk about realistic. I think that what somebody else deems as realistic is based upon their belief system. And they might be limited in that scope. They might have a limiting belief about what is realistic. And the way that our subconscious mind works is that if we believe them, that means we're deciding that what they're saying is true. Then it gets stored in a subconscious. But if we don't believe them, then it doesn't get stored in our subconscious. And so we have to get more aware and vigilant about what we allow into our subconscious, because if we don't, we will end up living somebody else's version of what they think is realistic, based on their limiting beliefs. So for example, as an entrepreneur myself, starting a business and wanting to own a home and, in the hills or by the ocean, that's going to be a multi-million-dollar home. So if I want to, buy a multi-million-dollar home, I have to believe that it's realistic for that to happen. I have to believe that it's realistic for me to buy a multi-million-dollar home. And the way that I do that is by looking for proof and for ways of how to make that tangibly happen. Like if I can learn more about what it takes to own a multi-million-dollar home, what does my income need to be? I spoke to realtors, I spoke to lenders, I learned about the process of, how much would I put down? People that are buying at that level, are they paying in cash? I really had to learn all of these things. And the more I learned it, the more it becomes more realistic because I understand what it takes, right? So as I have grown as a business owner, as an entrepreneur, I started to know people. I started to expand my friend base of other entrepreneurs who are further along than me financially, right? So for example, one of my friends last year just hit her first $1 million a year. So $1 million in a year, that's like $83,000 a month, right? Now, most people would say, $83,000 a month? That's not realistic, right? Some people aren't even making that per year. And so we decide that that isn't realistic. But to my friend who has done it, it's totally realistic to her. She did it. So her reality is not the same of somebody else's reality because she believes in a different definition of what is realistic. And if we look at it, it's totally realistic for her to make $83,000 a month. It's also totally realistic for her to incrementally grow every year and make more than that. It is not that far off for her to make $100,000 a month. One of her mentors has made up to $400,000 a month. Again, it sounds like something that's not realistic, right? And you could say, oh, well, she got lucky or she won the lottery. No, they're just entrepreneurs that learned how to build a business. And actually, Jack Canfield says in that book, The Success Principles, that a millionaire is made every 4 minutes, I believe, in the United States. So it's much more common than we realize, but in our mind tells us it's not realistic. So if I want to be a millionaire or if I want to own a multi-million-dollar home, and that means that I need to have an income, past $1 million, I can't take on somebody else's belief that says I can't do that. I can't listen to someone that says, Erica, that's not really realistic, right? I can't take that on because if I do, it'll never happen. I'll never get that house. So instead, I have to surround myself with people like my friend who's already now hitting $1 million a year and seeing how she's doing it and learning from her and going, oh, okay, totally realistic. So I'm deciding that what I want, even though it might sound crazy to other people, is actually really realistic to me. And so I have to decide that for myself, and I can't base my belief on what someone else's belief is.
That sounds like that sounds really nice. How can an artist ruin their own career because they're living someone else's fear-based reality?
Well, with my example of the house, if I take on someone else's limiting belief that this is impossible, I ruin the dream by not even, if I don't even believe it could happen, I'm not going to learn how to grow my income. I'm not going to speak to a lender and learn what a lender is going to need from me as an entrepreneur who doesn't bring home W-2s every week. All of that research that I've done, I wouldn't do that research if I take on their beliefs. So, I don't know if ruin is the word that I would use, that they're ruining their career, but I think that you're always going to get what you believe. So if you take on somebody else's belief that this can't happen or you can't have that, that's exactly what you will get. So it'll, I guess, ruin, any chances of having the thing that you desire if you're not believing that you can have it.
How do we get in tune with our own reality?
In tune with your own reality, meaning in tune with the reality you want to create, like whatever you want to be realistic for yourself.
That's true, because I guess we could get in tune with our own reality that's negative.
Like basically you never want to get in tune with your reality. Like your reality is not having what you want, right? Like right now in my reality, I don't have the house. So I don't want to get in tune with that reality. I want to get in tune with the reality in which I have the house. So, I mean, Abraham Hicks talks about this a lot, but it's really about like, stop focusing on what you don't have. Abraham says that every subject is really two subjects, the having it and the not having it. So if you want to book a show, you're either focused on the fact that you haven't booked it yet and don't have it, or you're focused on the fact that you're going to have it, right? And so one of those is the dominant thought there. And so you don't want to focus on the reality that you don't have it. You want to focus on the reality you're creating in the future, in the near future. So you really want to get in tune with the reality that you want to create. From a law of attraction standpoint, in terms of like manifesting whatever is in your life right now, you have created, you have manifested. So everything you have now is based on things you've done in the past. And so the same for the future things that you want is going to be based on what you're doing right now. So what you're doing right now, it's talking about getting in alignment with the thing that you want. What do we do now to manifest that thing in the future? We get aligned with it, meaning we believe that we're going to have it. We stop focusing on lack, stop focusing on what we don't have. And we just get excited about it. We visualize, we focus on how it's going to feel. It's really about the feeling. So when I have this job, I'm going to feel really excited and really confident and really proud. Okay, well, can I experience those emotions right now? Totally. You don't need to book a job to feel excited. You can get excited, right? You can create that emotion for yourself. So it's about like, how can I just focus on feeling excited and confident and proud, right? And that is going to call this in. As opposed to if I got in tune with my current reality where I don't have the job, I might feel sad. I might feel frustrated. I might feel not worthy, right? And all of those things. And when we focus on those feelings, and by the way, this is not to say that it's bad to feel those feelings. Like I always tell my clients, it's healthy and okay to feel whatever comes up for you. It's just about, can we shorten the time in which we don't feel good and shift into feeling better? So it's getting aligned with those feelings and belief in what's coming and expecting it.
How does someone take action toward their goals when they can barely get out of bed in the morning?
They don't. I think the action that they work on is getting out of bed in the morning. We can sometimes feel overwhelmed with all of the things we need to do or want to do. But if you're feeling that way, if you're feeling like I can't get out of bed in the morning, you really just want to focus on the task at hand, which is like, Abraham talks about you don't have to jump the emotional scale. So if you're feeling really low, you don't have to try to jump to feeling amazing and going for your dreams and doing all your goals, doing all the actions for your goals. It's about incremental increases. Like, could I just feel a little bit better? Can I somehow focus on getting myself better so I feel good enough to get out of bed? Can I then maybe take a shower? Or could I maybe do some exercise to get my heart rate going and build those endorphins and just take care of myself? Can I climb that ladder so that from here, then you can feel a little better in here and then here, right? And you're incrementally climbing so that when you get to a place then when you can finally start to feel good, then you can focus on going for your goals. But I think that, our mental health is so much more important than any goal. And so it's so important. I always tell my clients too, like your alignment, your energy should be your priority above all. So if you are feeling really rejected one day and you're feeling really down, don't go email 10 more agents because you don't feel good. Wait until you feel better. Make your energy the priority. Work on what can I do to make myself feel better, to shift my energy. That has to be my priority. Then I'll go take those actions. Because you really want to take the action from a place where you feel good so that you get that reflected back to you. Plus, when you're feeling good, you'll be led to better ideas. You know, when you can't even get out of bed, you're not going to have that amazing idea, you know, to take some new risk.
And going back to your job scenario, which is a great example, you finally got this one job, which was more of a survival job, and it really helped you just get out of your own mindset, all this stuff. And then that's when the job that you really wanted came calling.
Totally. And again, that's why I say, like, I'm so grateful for that waitressing job. You know, it really helped shift my energy and get me out of feeling depressed. And yeah, that did really good things for me.
Yeah. What do you consider the impossible dream?
Well, the title of my book has that word in quotes in the subtitle because I don't think that anything's impossible. I really don't. And I know that sounds cheesy. Oh, nothing's impossible. But you can't think that anything you want is impossible or else you'll never go for it in the manner that it's going to require. So I don't think anything's impossible. I think other people might tell you that they think it's impossible. You know, there might be data or evidence that suggests it might be challenging. But any obstacle or any challenge, to me, that's not enough information to say, oh, that's too impossible. I shouldn't do it. I shouldn't even try. So yeah, I don't believe that anything is impossible.
How would you handle if one of your clients was giving up on their quote unquote Hollywood dream and you feel like maybe that's the right decision for them?
I've never felt that way ever. I would never feel that way. Again, though, it's not my decision. It's not up to me. I would never decide if someone should go for it or not, or if someone should quit or not. That has to come from them alone. And so I would just encourage them to get in touch with their true desires and their true feelings to help them figure out what's the right move for them. You know, I don't think there's anything wrong with someone saying, I want to do something else now instead. Like, that's okay too. I mean, look at me. I worked in television for all these years, and then I was like, I want to coach. I want to help other people. So, you know, our dreams change sometimes, but I would never be the one to tell someone that they should quit or they shouldn't do this.
Have you ever seen it where someone comes to you and they say, you know, I'm not getting to X, Y, and D in my career, and then you realize, well, this was just the total wrong path for them?
No.
You've never seen that?
No. Again, I know I romanticize it a little bit, but I also think that is a superpower. Like, I think it's okay that I romanticize it because that has led to my success. But I truly believe if they have this dream, then they can make it happen. And so it really just comes down to them having the desire. If you have a desire for a dream, I will help you. I believe that you can make it happen. It's as simple as that for me.
When did you first hear of Abraham Hicks?
Oh gosh, years ago. I don't remember. 5 years ago, maybe? I went to one of their live events a couple years ago. Yeah. Maybe 5 or 6 years ago.
And it's all about manifestation?
It's law of attraction.
Law of attraction.
You know, Esther Hicks channels an entity called Abraham. I know that's very weird if you're new. It might be too woo for you, but it's just information about law of attraction where people just ask them questions and they answer. And it's, no matter what they ask, it's very applicable to what they're going through anyone's life. So, so I've been listening for years because it helps me and I like it.
Yeah. What are the big problems that are arising for artists during COVID? And how are you helping them through it?
I love this question because I have been humbled with the answer to this question. I have really learned a lot. I have seen proof during COVID that absolutely anything is possible. And to me, that is incredible. I always give these examples. Sarah Cooper. I don't know if you know Sarah Cooper. She's a comedian, a writer. She posted on social media these funny videos, or on TikTok, I think, and she blew up. And she was already I think she was already doing some work, but she just blew up during the pandemic while Hollywood is shut down. Like, things aren't even filming at all. And she ends up getting a Netflix special. And she also was invited to do the opening night monologue on one of the late night TV shows. And she did a phenomenal job. I watched it. I was so impressed. It's a great example of, even when the industry is shut down, opportunities still exist. And to me, that has been so humbling because, you know, I can fall into the victim mode of oh my gosh, this is so hard. I mean, look, you know, my business, I lost 60% of my business during the pandemic. But I did pivot and I was like, well, how else can I serve people right now? How else can I help people right now? Instead of just throwing in the towel, right? So I think, the way that I'm supporting my clients during the pandemic is a little different now because things have started up and things are filming. I mean, not as much as before, but things are filming. But I'm really, empowering them to believe that their dreams are still possible during this time. I mean, there are other artists that have, really blown up and gotten a lot of attention and opportunity during this time. Caitlin Riley is another example. Her Instagram account blew up. She does this like hilarious 60-second videos that people really related to and really loved. And her account blew up. I see she getting like sponsored deals now, so it's been humbling. It's like, Erica, come on, you teach this, that anything is possible. And so that's been exciting for me to learn, like really anything is possible at any time. There's no wrong time to pursue your dream. Even this pandemic, I don't think it's the wrong time.
And you started your book in February 2020?
Yeah, I started writing it in February, yes.
Wow.
Yeah, right. So I wrote a book during the pandemic, yeah.
And now you're doing the audiobook?
Yes.
Wow.
Yes.
So you're basically saying, okay, one part, you said you're pivoting. So at what point did you say, okay, I'm showing up at the computer today to write this first page of this book?
I don't mean to sound annoying, but like I never struggled with that.
Oh, okay.
I just didn't. Because like when I got the idea for the book wasn't a strategic pivoting move from the pandemic. It was just happened to be like in December of the previous year of 2019, October, November, December is when I started to get the nudge to write the book. And so I was already planning to do it before the pandemic happened. And I talk about this in the book, but it just felt like I was divinely guided to write this book and I had to get this message out. And so it was a challenging path in terms of like, I rewrote the first chapter 100 times, that it was challenging in finding my voice and how do I want this book to just be for Hollywood or do I want it to be for everyone? And that was an interesting learning experience, figuring that, solving that problem and figuring out, do I want this message to be applicable to everyone? And if I do, how much Hollywood do I include? How much do I exclude? So there was, challenges in that aspect, but I never really struggled with like, oh my gosh, I have to sit down at the computer today and write this.
Right, going back, you said you're a self-starter.
Yes, I just felt very inspired to do it. But like, look, the audiobook is taking me forever because it's so much work and I'm not really I've only recorded like a chapter and a half. So, yeah.